Chapter 2014. Liang Yin obtained the heavenly demonic sound, and the man from the martial emperor's city obtained the power of purple thunder, which might be the great way of thunder. Although the two of them didn't show it, Liang Yin said that her strength had increased by about 50%. Of course, Liang Yin's claim of a 50% increase could also be due to her previous strength being relatively weak. But in any case, Han Fei felt that if he could get the ultimate blade, it would be like adding wings to a tiger. It could be said that with the ultimate blade, he would be invincible in the same realm. Maybe some people could barely resist it if they were prepared, but what if they were unprepared? Who could resist the ultimate blade? Swish, 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 swish. Since he was trying to lure the ultimate blade, Han Fei didn't want to defeat it by fighting. Instead, he flashed crazily, almost at his fastest speed. However, although the phantom glass wings could appear almost infinitely, as long as he appeared and disappeared, he couldn't avoid the ultimate blade. While Han Fei was flashing, his body had been pierced by the ultimate blade 7 or 8 times. It seemed that this kind of flashing ability couldn't lure the ultimate blade, which was about to go elsewhere to find the inheritance. However, Han Fei's golden light leap immediately attracted the ultimate blade again. Even when Han Fei performed the golden light leap, the infinity blade actually chased him into the void. This kind of leap was not as simple as escaping into the void, but leaping forward in the form of a spatial node that light could reach. The ultimate blade seemed to be quite curious about Han Fei's speed, so it directly chased after him. It didn't slow down at all and flew all the way here. Han Fei, on the other hand, leaped over. Because the ultimate blade didn't know where Han Fei was going, it could only chase after Han Fei after he appeared, which made it slow down. That was probably why the ultimate blade was so curious about Han Fei. Puff! As soon as Han Fei appeared, he was pierced through, and this time, a large amount of essence blood was taken away, about half of it. Han Fei was shocked. At this rate, his essence blood would be drained after 20 times. The ultimate blade was so fast that 20 times was very fast for it. Therefore, Han Fei activated the heavenly opening divine technique, gathered the invincible will around him, and forcibly slowed down the frequency of the ultimate blade piercing him. From being able to suck blood 20 times in an instant, he could only suck blood 3 times in a single breath. But even so, even with the heavenly awakening divine art, he didn't have enough qi and blood. Han Fei only held on for 5 seconds before he really started to run, because he had to. The ultimate blade seemed to be recognizing its master. His essence blood had been drained, and he was only left with 30%. If he wanted to recover, he needed some time. So Han Fei immediately activated the Gemini divine technique, and the white mist continued to run. However, the body of white mist would definitely be killed off quickly, while the body of black mist waved his fishing rod and fished for time in the void. That was because the ultimate blade had only appeared for a short period of time, just a few dozen breaths ago. Therefore, it wasn't very difficult to fish the ultimate blade. He only used it twice before a fake ultimate blade appeared. With a thought from Han Fei, the two ultimate blades began a battle of limits. And Han Fei escaped into reality, Gemini as one, and immediately performed the heavenly awakening divine technique. At the same time, tens of thousands of spiritual fruits around him collapsed at the same time to produce blood for himself. But the others didn't understand, wondering if Han Fei had already recovered that knife. Clank, clank, clank. Then, they saw that there seemed to be two things flashing past in the air, fighting each other and colliding with each other, making sounds. An invisible battle seemed to have broken out around Han Fei, and Han Fei himself stood in it, crazily devouring spiritual fruits. Qi and blood surged in his body, and in just more than 20 seconds, his qi and blood overflowed from his body and soared into the sky. At this moment, the corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly, and he directly mobilized the ultimate blade that he could control to stab himself. Puff, puff, puff. His surging qi and blood were rapidly decreasing, and in less than 2 seconds, the overflowing qi and blood had disappeared. After another 2 seconds, Han Fei felt that the ultimate blade had established a connection with him. Han Fei was a king of body tempering, and the thickness and richness of his qi and blood were incomparable to that of ordinary kings. Moreover, Han Fei's bloodline level was extremely high, and the blood recognition was naturally related to the bloodline level, so it wasn't very difficult for him to do so. Therefore, when the ultimate blade pierced through Han Fei's body for the last time, it could never come out again, because it belonged to Han Fei. Han Fei felt that he suddenly understood a lot of truths in his mind. He felt like a ray of light, and light was walking in reality. The essence of reality and the void was that the void depended on reality, just like one was the outer skin and the other was the inner skin. The void was a part of reality. What didn't belong to reality was the endless void. The endless void broke through the outer skin and inner skin and went to an unexplorable place. After entering, there was only endless nothingness and darkness left. Therefore, Han Fei's previous understanding that reality and the void were a transition from one world to another was wrong. The relationship between reality and the void was like a thick layer of green sac under the skin of a watermelon. Therefore, the so-called tearing open the void was actually just opening up a layer of skin. But it was much more difficult to open the endless void. Ordinary strength would not be able to cut open the endless void. It was just like how the green sac of a watermelon was very thick. If one wanted to cut open the endless void, they would have to break the inner and outer skin. Therefore, more strength was needed, and the cut had to be deeper. And these only strengthened Han Fei's understanding of reality and the void. If he wanted to run as fast as the ultimate blade, according to his own understanding, he had to transform into a Tao. Turning himself into a part of the speed was a way to transform into a Tao. Han Fei was even amazed. If this was possible, it would almost open a new door for him. He didn't know how many Taos he had and whether he could transform into all of them. This reminded Han Fei of when he was on the Scattered Stars Island in the Yin-Yang Heaven. He heard that the Sea King transformed into a Tao and blessed billions of creatures in the sea with his body as a Tao. But now it seemed that it was bullshit. Maybe that was what was written in the book. But how many creatures could he bless? That was obviously a problem. Because transforming into a Tao could only transform into a Tao that he owned, and he couldn't transform into any Tao. The so-called Tao of incarnation was actually a kind of Tao in the state of his own consciousness. For example, the Yin-Yang Tao and the Supreme Yin-Yang Will were equivalent to a form of Tao transformation. For example, the Invincible Path and the Invincible Golden Body were equivalent to a form of Tao transformation. Of course, if he wanted to completely transform into Tao, Han Fei needed to transform himself into a Tao. At this time, Han Fei seemed to understand that transforming into a Tao didn't mean that he would die. He could still transform back after that. Unfortunately, he didn't have time to test it at this moment. Anyway, he got another low-quality divine weapon. This was already the second one, and he received an additional Tao. If it weren't for the fact that the water essence of the infinity water didn't seem to be enough, the infinity water might also be promoted to a low-quality divine weapon. What a pity. Phew, when Han Fei opened his eyes and smiled, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that Han Fei had taken this one. At this time, they would rather Han Fei took the inheritance of this Tao. Otherwise, it would be too horrible. It would be a massacre. Even if he could resist for 1 or 2 seconds, he couldn't resist for 10 or 8 seconds. Look at Ji Xian, one of the top 10 on the sea expansion list in the chaotic ocean. Even if it was just a little bit off, it wasn't much. In front of that small knife, it was nothing. It could cut him to death just like that. The luckiest one was Hong Yu. He had exchanged 500 million resources for his life. If Han Fei hadn't performed the Heavenly Awakening divine technique on him, he would have been the first to die. However, no one dared to relax, because this was only the third Tao. The Venerable Emperor was going to impart 5 Tao in a row, but the third Tao was already so dangerous. How dangerous would the next 2 be? After Han Fei obtained this Tao, no one dared to relax for a moment. They still fused with their spiritual beasts and even activated their secret methods. After only a dozen seconds, all of a sudden, everyone felt their bodies go limp. It was as if infinite gravity had been imposed on their bodies. Even Han Fei felt that his body was tense as if the sky had collapsed. This time, the three people from the behemoth bloodline had just returned to the form of a giant beast. The toad had just returned to its giant beast form. Although it wasn't in its complete form, it was still big enough. However, the toad fell directly to the ground, bleeding all over, and his flesh was falling apart. At that moment, he chose to return to his human form, but even so, when he recovered, he had turned into a bloody mess. Fortunately, kings had the power of regeneration. As long as he was not dead, it was very easy for him to recover. Learning from the toad, the one-horned female flood dragon and the cuttlefish girl also turned into human forms. Only then did everyone see that above their heads, a huge palm, which almost covered the entire space, was slapping down. Therefore, everyone only felt that the pressure on their bodies was increasing crazily. Huang Jia cursed, "Are you going to kill us? Are you not going to let go of those who have already inherited the Tao?" However, Liang Yin suddenly said, "No, that knife didn't hit me just now. Among all of you, I'm the only one who didn't get hit." The young man from the martial emperor city also said, "Although the heavenly demonic sound is strong, it doesn't seem to have a deep impact on my soul. It's not exaggerated to the point where I'm going crazy." When everyone heard this, they immediately understood. So, those who had received the inheritance could actually avoid the other Tao inheritances. Didn't this mean that the next two Tao, which were more difficult, had to be inherited by those who hadn't received the Tao inheritances? Chapter 2015. The sky-covering hand was slowly descending, but the toad shouted, "The power of this hand is too great. I fell to the ground with a bang just now, and my flesh has been smashed into pieces." The one-horned female flood dragon said, "Let me have a try." The female flood dragon flew up and waved her tail. She turned into a shadow of a flood dragon in the air, and a sharp metal aura burst out. Her giant tail soared up to the sky. Bam bam, there were two consecutive collisions. The first one was from the tail of the one-horned female flood dragon, and the second one was from the explosion of her giant tail. Pooh! The one-horned female flood dragon spat out a mouthful of blood, but her power had slightly shaken the sky-covering giant hand. Everyone saw the giant hand pause for a moment. Although the time was very short, not even half a second, at least the power of the giant hand was not unshakable. While everyone was surprised by the power of the giant hand, Han Fei frowned slightly. The female flood dragon didn't seem to use her real strength. Could it be that she didn't want this path? At this time, everyone already knew that the so-called crisis was actually the inheritance of the Great Path. They just didn't know about the thunder test, or rather, they didn't understand it and were very passive. Later, they really couldn't subdue the heavenly demonic sound and the ultimate blade. But this time, they could see it. It was more like a struggle of power. This was the fourth path. If they could get the inheritance of the Great Path, wouldn't their strength be doubled? So, at this time, someone had an idea. The one-horned female flood dragon was defeated. Pang Jia of the 100 Demons transformed into an old turtle. His turtle shell flashed with red light and soared to the sky. Dong, in terms of defense, Pang Jia had just blocked thousands of attacks from the ultimate blade, which was enough to prove his strength. Pang Jia's strength was completely different from that of the one-horned female flood dragon. He seemed to have resisted the giant hand. But good things didn't last. Pang Jia only managed to hold on for 5 breaths of time. With a cracking sound, a crack suddenly appeared on his tortoiseshell. Immediately, Pang Jia became dispirited and fell. Unlike normal kings, the tortoise's tortoise shell was affected by the heaven and earth array. Recovering it was not easy. Pang Jia didn't have the support of Han Fei's apocalyptic divine technique, so when he found that he couldn't resist it, he immediately retreated. At the very least, he could preserve his strength and give himself some time to recover. If there was really no one here who could stop him, he would still end up in his hands in the end. At this moment, Li Dian of the Merfolk royal family suddenly met the attack. Compared to Pang Jia, Li Dian's attack was much more ferocious. Li Dian held the harpoon in his hand and was surrounded by waves of water. He faced the heavenly palm with one hand, and it seemed that he wanted to compete in strength. Boom, there was another loud bang. Li Dian was on par with Pang Jia, and he actually single-handedly blocked this sky-covering hand. Roar! 10,000 tides, the great tides of the vast sea. At that moment, it was as if layers upon layers of waves surged into the sky, spanning more than 300 miles, one wave after another, surging violently. In fact, in terms of strength, no one here was stronger than Han Fei. However, if this hand represented strength, no one here could resist it except Han Fei, right? If the power of thunder was the great Tao of Emperor's first reincarnation, then according to the order, this great Tao of strength should be the great Tao of Emperor's fourth reincarnation, and it was very likely to be the third strongest great Tao of him, even stronger than the great Tao of speed that Han Fei had obtained. If it was really so strong, Li Dian couldn't resist it. Sure enough, Han Fei's guess was confirmed. Although Li Dian seemed to be strong, he only persisted for 2 minutes longer than Pang Jia duo. Bam! After 2 minutes, Pang Jia's arm was deformed and finally exploded. At this time, everyone turned their eyes to Han Fei. Baiyu said, Han Fei, why don't you try to have 2 great Daos at the same time? The martial emperor city knew Han Fei very well. According to their intelligence, Han Fei's body refining level was even stronger than that of the Grand Essence stage, and his explosive power was even stronger. Baiyu didn't have the ability to resist this sky-covering hand, so he naturally counted on Han Fei. Seeing that the sky-covering hand was getting lower and lower, the pressure on Ultimate King was getting heavier and heavier. If he was completely suppressed by this hand, apart from the 3 of them who had obtained the inheritance, everyone else would die. Even if they obtained the inheritance, they might not die. If that was the case, did it mean that no one had come here in the past 10,000 years, and no one had obtained the inheritance? Old Huang Jie smiled gently. It seems that in the end, we all have to rely on you. Su Yan couldn't help laughing at himself. You are indeed worthy of the title of King of Humanity. I didn't expect that in the end, you will bear all the responsibility. Hearing this, everyone remembered that Han Fei considered himself to be the king of humanity. Su Yan, Liang Yin, and Hong Yu all found that Han Fei was actually quite easy to talk to. As long as he admitted defeat, it would not be a big deal. Han Fei didn't want to argue with him. What he was afraid of was those who refused to admit defeat and insisted on fighting. For example, Tai Ching Wuji had repeatedly attacked the Yin-Yang heaven and tried all kinds of means to kill Han Fei. How could they not kill him? Therefore, as soon as Zhou Fu and Ji Xian appeared, Han Fei directly exploded and killed them. 2 overlords who were at least in the top 20 of the chaotic ocean had died just like that. Wasn't it just a gift? As for Han Fei himself, he actually wanted this great path. Fortuitous encounters and treasures couldn't be obtained by others because their abilities were limited, so it was impossible for them to obtain fortuitous encounters. Although it was good to pick them up by luck, most of the time, both luck and strength had to be taken into account. Otherwise, these fortuitous encounters wouldn't be fortuitous encounters, but a path to disaster. Therefore, Han Fei summoned the infinity water to protect himself. Then, the great path was activated. With a low roar, the Dharma idol appeared. Everyone saw a giant rising, and Han Fei was standing on the head of the Dharma idol. At this moment, Han Fei and the Dharma idol both did the same action, blocking the sky-covering hand with both hands. 2 muffled sounds rang out consecutively, and the sky-covering hand stopped. 1 breath. 2 breaths. 10 breaths. 20 breaths. Just when everyone thought that Han Fei would be able to withstand this attack, they heard a crack and saw some cracks appear on the Dharma image. Then, the king saw the center of Han Fei's eyebrows split open, the invincible eye opened, and his body was wrapped in a layer of golden light. At this point, Han Fei's power had exceeded 1 million waves. Boom, crack, the earth was cracking, and the Dharma idol seemed to be pressed into the ground by that terrible power. The battle of strength between the 2 sides made the kings tremble. On the martial emperor city's side, when Bai Yu saw the Dharma idol, he felt that Han Fei's Dharma idol seemed to be more powerful. He guessed that the firmament Dharma idol performed by different people was different. At this moment, Han Fei felt that he didn't get any Tao of strength, but he felt that the Tao of strength seemed to be able to integrate with the Tao of gravity. As it happened, he knew both of these Taos. Therefore, Han Fei used the Tao of gravity to reverse gravity, but it was still a little difficult. This could only mean that the fourth imperial emperor's understanding of the Tao of gravity was stronger than his. However, Han Fei didn't gain nothing. For a long time, he hadn't been able to really integrate with the Dharma idol. However, under the power of the sky-covering giant hand, his physical body was merging with the Dharma world. Or rather, his body was being squeezed into the inside of the Dharma idol. Logically speaking, the Dharma idol was his enlarged body. But Han Fei and the Dharma idol were separated. Maybe it was because he had cultivated the firmament Dharma idol in advance. But in any case, now Han Fei felt that he was merging with the Dharma idol bit by bit. With the Dharma idol as one, his strength would definitely be further improved, so Han Fei wasn't in a hurry. He even felt that his strength was still a little bit lacking. Then, Han Fei swallowed another 5th-level Tao pattern pill. However, it was a pity that the 5th-level Tao pattern pill could no longer provide him with several times the strength. It could only barely increase Han Fei's temporary strength by about 80,000 waves. But at this time, every bit of strength was good. Han Fei's body was gradually squeezed into the Dharma idol. Below, old man Huang Jia couldn't help but be amazed. He is also a king. Everyone knew what Huang Jia meant. They all exclaimed in their hearts. Yes. Han Fei was just a king now. If Han Fei could open the sky, how strong would he be? Were he Daoyuan and Bei Luochen so strong before they opened the sky? Don't be ridiculous. They all became kings together at the beginning. Although the masters of the immortal palace didn't say it, didn't they know who was stronger and who was weaker? With Han Fei's current strength, no one in the Pioneer Sea realm could rival him. The Giant Beast Clan. The Toad Giant Beast sighed. I didn't expect him to be so strong. If I had known, I would have joined hands with him. The one-horned female flood dragon asked, What do you mean? I won't tell you. Pang Jia and Zhou Bai looked awful. The stronger Han Fei was, the more danger they would be in. But at this moment, they didn't dare to disturb Han Fei. Because if Han Fei didn't collapse, they would also be finished. They could only hope that Han Fei would be seriously injured or find a way to run away. About half an hour later, Han Fei had completely merged into the Dharma idol body. As soon as Han Fei entered the Dharma idol body, his body naturally fell between the two ribs on the chest of this Dharma idol body. It was a kind of harmonious feeling. It was a combination of power. Han Fei felt that his strength seemed to have skyrocketed by 30%. He didn't know whether it was the power of the Dharma idol, his own power, or the power of the combination of the two. However, the sacrificing punch suddenly erupted. Dong, the terrifying power shook the heads of the kings and made them buzz. They were directly hit by the strongest impact, and many people vomited blood. However, when they looked up at the sky again, the sky-covering palm was gone. Only a huge Dharma idol was left, shrouded in invincible will, shining with golden light, like a giant god. Chapter 2016. Of the 5 inheritances, Han Fei had already taken 2. Everyone's hearts shook. They wanted the next inheritance to be theirs, but they also hoped that Han Fei would be able to take the next inheritance. Of course, the people of the seabed and the 100 demons didn't want Han Fei to take the last inheritance. Not to mention that after Han Fei obtained the inheritance, their safety would not be guaranteed. Han Fei had obtained the inheritances of the venerable emperor one after another. If this continued, who could stop Han Fei? Just look at the powerhouses of Tai Ching Palace and Wuji Heaven who were against Han Fei. They killed without hesitation and without hesitation. Would they be afraid of the 100 Demon Clan and the Seabed Human Clan at all if they were afraid of the Human Clan? Zhou Bai and Pang Jia exchanged glances. Both of them knew that no matter what, they had to either attack or find a way to escape. There was no third option. What everyone didn't know was that Han Fei didn't actually inherit the Tao of Power, because Han Fei felt that he could block the so-called Tao of Power. It was only because he had not reached the limits of the sea-opening realm. Perhaps in terms of strength, he was not inferior to the fourth reincarnation of the Venerable Sovereign. Therefore, the path of strength this time was only to help him completely merge with Dharma World. From now on, if he used Dharma World to fight, his strength would increase by 30%. However, Dizun's fourth reincarnation had chosen the path of strength, which meant that he had chosen the path of body refining. Moreover, judging from the power just now, Dizun's fourth reincarnation was comparable to him in terms of power. It was hard to say if he would be stronger than him at the peak of sea opening, but at least he would be stronger than his current self. Therefore, two questions arose in Han Fei's mind. First of all, even with this kind of body-refining strength, he still couldn't prove his Tao in the end, so why would he need to go on a fifth reincarnation? Secondly, after experiencing the three great ways, the Venerable Emperor chose the school of body refining, which meant that he must have pondered it over and over again. If he didn't have absolute confidence at the beginning of his cultivation, how could he choose this path? If nothing unexpected happened, then the time consumed by the school of body refinement would absolutely be much longer than the time taken by the other grand Daos. These two questions made Han Fei wonder if body tempering alone was not enough to achieve immortality. As the saying goes, we must stand on the shoulders of giants. If our predecessors have any proof, we should use it as proof and research. He had to find a way to know the pros and cons of the body refining school. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder what would happen if this road was abandoned. So, what kind of way did the fifth incarnation of Venerable Sovereign walk? After all, this Venerable Sovereign had attained immortality in his sixth life. He must have comprehended the true meaning of immortality in his fifth life. Han Fei vaguely felt that this was the real meaning of the existence of the Imperial Palace. The more dangerous the place, the greater the opportunity. His trip to the depths of the Eternal Lightning Prison was not in vain. Just as Han Fei was waiting for the fifth path to appear, the space began to tremble slightly. The five graves were approaching each other, and slowly, the five graves merged into one, turning into a strange scene of one grave and one tablet. Bang! Just as everyone was on guard against the fifth road, they suddenly saw a protrusion on the grave. Holy shit! Even Han Fei was shocked. The toad exclaimed, "No way! Was it not enough to leave behind a few great Daos? Now, you still want to keep one alive?" The cuttlefish girl said, "It can't be alive. Only the sixth incarnation can be a venerable sovereign. How can it still be alive?" The one-horned female flood dragon said, "The Imperial Palace has appeared here and wants to keep everything. I'm afraid that even the venerable sovereign himself may have died." Han Fei said, "Then it must be a corpse that has come back to life. Hung Yu, your mad corpse heaven is good at controlling corpses. Is it easy to defeat a corpse of this level?" Hung Yu shook his head like a rattle and said, "This must be the ultimate Tao of the Venerable Sovereign. If this corpse comes back to life, I'm afraid no one here can suppress it." Bai Yu asked, "It's just a corpse that has opened the sky. No one can suppress it?" Hung Yu said, "It's not as simple as opening the sky. This is a corpse that is most likely to lead to the Venerable Sovereign. Besides, only my mad corpse heaven knows how terrifying corpse puppets are. A real corpse is invincible, let alone this one." Huang Jie said, "Don't panic. My god-killing demon poison can melt everything. Maybe we can try it." Bam they saw that the soil on the grave seemed to be pushed up by something. It was like a human hand, and the kings were all shocked. They just hoped that the situation where many kings were wiped out at once wouldn't happen. Because at this time, the few people who were still alive, except for Han Fei and the underwater humans and the 100 demons, had almost no hostile relationship, so everyone should live in peace. Puff! Everyone's hearts were in their mouths. With a puff, they saw something as thick as an arm sticking out of the grave. Then the kings all breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was not an arm. A bronze-colored tree branch stretched out from the grave. Why was it a tree branch? Naturally, it was because there were two tender bronze leaves hanging on it. However, in everyone's eyes, this bronze branch was growing vigorously. In less than 2 seconds, it had grown 4 or 5 times in size. 3 seconds later, it was nearly 2 meters tall. 10 seconds later, it reached a height of more than 20 meters, and everyone saw various strange lines begin to appear on the trunk. When the number was bigger, Baiyu shouted in a low voice, "Dao pattern?" Han Fei and Baiyu recognized it almost at the same time. The existence of the Dao pattern let Han Fei know that this thing was definitely of a high level. After 100 breaths, this place was already more than 500 meters tall. With a peng sound, a green curtain of light swept out from the tree. The kings instinctively retreated, but the surroundings were sealed off by the electric ring, so they couldn't retreat. When everyone was swept by the green light, they saw that their surroundings had directly changed. At this time, it was no longer a grave in front of everyone, but a huge bronze divine tree. And where they were, they seemed to be above the starry sky. In the distance, stars were twinkling. The kings looked up and saw that the bronze tree was covered with strange lights. Han Fei felt that the origin sea moved, or to be exact, the demon purification pot moved. Little vine. Han Fei was shocked. Is this luck? Is there a little vine here? However, before Han Fei thought too much, he heard the snow girl say, "Perception works." Han Fei was also taken aback. He scanned hundreds of thousands of kilometers with his perception, and each of the dazzling treasures looked extremely extraordinary. Ring, ring, ring. The crowd turned to look at the source of the sound, and they saw a bronze bell emitting a crisp sound. But in fact, the bell was even bigger than the Toad King in its complete state. Near the blue bell, there was a bright red flame burning on the branch, which was also huge. Judging from the weird flame, it was obviously a rare fire of heaven and earth. Above it, Han Fei also saw a familiar item, which was the crystal ball that contained the yin-yang sky and the waterwood sky, which was also a small world. Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. A branch hanging a world. Su Yan exclaimed, "What's that?" "Stars. 9 stars are hanging on the tree." Everyone followed Su Yan's direction and continued to look up, and then they all gasped. As a king, he must have studied the appearance of the big stars. If they weren't stars, what could they be? But they were a little small, and each seemed to have a radius of less than 1,000 kilometers. On the tree, Han Fei saw fishing rods, gems, swaying whips, shiny battle suits, and an ancient divine boat, and these were not the most important, because at the top of this bronze tree, there was a futon. There was a jade slip and a small vine on the futon. Seeing this, Han Fei was excited. Sure enough, the more dangerous the place was, the more opportunities there were. In this way, this was the 6th small vine of the demon purification pot. In the chaotic azure sea, this was already the 3rd small vine he had obtained. Han Fei didn't understand why the little vines were separated. Why were the vines scattered everywhere? And this time, he might be able to find the answer from the imperial palace. Similarly, more than one person saw the jade slip and the small vine. Hong Yu looked at Han Fei and thought, why is this small vine so similar to the small vine that old lady Chiu used to refine pills? And that small vine should be in Han Fei's hands now, right? Han Fei noticed Hong Yu's gaze and his eyes turned cold. Hong Yu immediately said, "I don't know anything, I won't fight for that small vine." Only then did Han Fei slowly retract his gaze. In fact, many others were secretly spying on Han Fei. Now, the strongest here should be Han Fei, Baiyu, and Pang Jia. Zhou Bai and Li Dian were powerful, but it was impossible for them to defeat Han Fei in close combat. With Pang Jia's powerful defense, he might be able to fight, but if they fought, his chances of winning were not high. Only Baiyu, who was in charge of the Martial Emperor City's super resource store, could be said to have many treasures. But Bai Yu said that he could only maintain about 30 seconds in the heaven-opening state. If this was true, even with all kinds of treasures, Bai Yu might not be Han Fei's match. But if Bai Yu held back, or if he had some special treasures, he could indeed fight with Han Fei. As for the giant beasts, Han Fei was sure that they had hidden their strength, but it was hard to say how much. But if they said that they could beat him, Han Fei did not believe it. Just as everyone was searching for treasures on the tree, Snow Girl said, "Don't forget our battle. Did you forget how big that tree was when we first saw it? Did you forget how dangerous it was?" Chapter 2017. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the Snow Lady, Su Xiuyan, and the others. Han Fei naturally didn't know what had happened in the past. The Snow Lady said, "Back then, we found the tree inside the bronze gate. That tree is almost the same size as this one. Even so, we ran into the spirit of the divine tree when we fought for it. In that battle alone, the number of monarchs who perished from the various major forces numbered over 100. Han Fei's heart did a flip. Was it the incident where more than 100 humans went there, but only 36 returned in the end and eventually established the 36 Black Heavens? So, that was the cause of the 36 mysterious heavens. Huang Jie said, "But it's slightly different. There were many great Daos on our tree, but there doesn't seem to be any great Daos on this one." Han Fei was confused. "You can see great Daos too?" Huang Jie explained, "After eating the fruit of Dao, different great Daos can be awakened depending on one's luck or fate. Or they can deepen their understanding of their own great Daos and extend them." Hong Yu added, "When we fought for the treasures on that tree, we ran into the illusion of an extraterrestrial demon. I'm afraid it's the same this time." Seeing that Han Fei was confused, Hong Yu said again, "When you pick the treasures, you'll fall into an illusion, or a place where you don't know if it's an illusion or not. Anyway, as many as 100 kings died that time." Han Fei thought to himself, "No matter how dangerous it is, I have to do it." Observing the situation of the others, it seemed to be the same. The opportunity was right in front of them. They only had two choices, fight for it or die. The Snow Lady said, "Don't be greedy. Find the most suitable one. That's the best." Liang Yin said, "I'm just a bit confused. Why hasn't the fifth great Tao appeared yet?" Not just Liang Yin, everybody had the same question. However, in front of the bronze tree and the treasures on it, everybody automatically suppressed the question. Han Fei couldn't help but glance at Pang Jia and Zhou Bai. He decided not to waste his energy on them for now. After he got the vine, he might have a chance to hunt them in the future. However, Pang Jia and Zhou Bai had goosebumps under Han Fei's stare. They wondered if Han Fei was trying to kill them before he searched for the treasures. As such, the two of them shot out with a whoosh and were already flying towards the bronze tree. Zhou Bai's target was a demonic essence bead that shone with a red light. Although Han Fei didn't know what it was, he knew that if Zhou Bai absorbed it, his strength would definitely increase greatly. But Han Fei didn't stop him. Not to mention whether Zhou Bai could get it, even if he did, so what? Would he be his opponent if he captured him? However, as soon as Zhou Bai stepped within 100 miles of the demon essence bullet, a blue ball of light appeared and enveloped him. It was as if there was a huge blue fruit growing on the bronze tree branch. The kings looked at each other, only to hear Huang Jie say, "It should be similar to the last time. Let's go, treasure hunting." Then, Huang Jie looked at Han Fei. "Now, it's up to fate. Not many kings came here, so those who can make it out alive are no exception. If we die, it will only be due to our lack of luck and strength." Han Fei nodded slightly. "Have a safe journey." Huang Jie and the others went in different directions. The Snow Lady found an invisible ice crystal, Huang Jie found a rainbow spirit worm, Liang Yin found a purple bamboo on a tree, Hong Yu found a skeleton. However, no one fought for the jade slip and the small vine at the top of the tree. On the other side, Bai Yu's perception had collided with Han Fei's several times on the top of the tree. He probably knew Han Fei's target. Now, only he and Han Fei hadn't made a move yet. The two looked at each other and Bai Yu said, although these are all rare treasures in the world, maybe each of them can help people open the sky. But the martial emperor's city has never lacked treasures. But can that small vine grow a 9th-grade divine pill? Han Fei grinned. What, you want to snatch it? Bai Yu shook his head slightly. It may be good stuff, but it's at the top. I haven't reached the level of opening the sky yet, so I don't want to die yet. I'm just reminding you that the 5th path hasn't appeared yet. Then, Bai Yu shook his head. His target was the 6th treasure below the top, a book. When everyone had their targets, Han Fei didn't go up immediately. Instead, he took out his fishing rod and caught a soul-calming pill for himself. Then, he cast the fishing rod in the river of time for a while. Although he didn't catch anything, Han Fei nodded slightly and flew to the top of the bronze tree. Just like the others, when Han Fei was within 100 kilometers of this place, he was surrounded by a blue light ball. The next moment, Han Fei appeared in the starry sky further away. Yes, far away, there were vast stars, and the nearest ones were several large stars. He scanned with his perception and found that the scene of desolation around the large stars was extremely real. And above the void, it was very cold, and he couldn't breathe. He could only absorb the spiritual energy and energy between heaven and earth. This made Han Fei suspicious. Am I really in the starry sky? That was still acceptable. However, she saw a young man dressed in black with a smile on his face tens of thousands of kilometers away, looking at her with a smile on his face. Han Fei couldn't help narrowing his eyes. Alive or dead? Originally, Han Fei didn't expect the person opposite him to answer. After all, the imperial palace had existed for tens of thousands of years. It was a bit exaggerated to tell him that there were still people alive here except for the venerable emperor. However, things were often unexpected. The person said, "It's been millions of years, and you are the 13th person to come here. I wonder what you can do." Although Han Fei was surprised, he immediately responded, "The 13th? Did the previous 12 people all pass the inheritance of several paths?" However, the person opposite him said leisurely, "Maybe, the way you came is different. Since you came here from there, you can feel the power of the 5th path." Huh? Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. The 5th path? Is it passed on from person to person? Didn't Huang Jia say it was a heavenly demon illusion? Or am I in an extremely real illusion? Before Han Fei realized what was going on, the man on the opposite side suddenly appeared in front of Han Fei and slapped him in the face. So fast. Han Fei suddenly realized that this person walked the path of extreme speed, which was the same as the ultimate blade he collected. The two walked the same path. A blue halo appeared in front of Han Fei, and with the help of the power of time, he launched a sacrificing punch backhandedly. But this time, the power of time failed to stop this person. The hand broke through the barrier of time as if it was as simple as breaking a water mirror, and slapped Han Fei hundreds of miles away with one palm. However, the moment the sacrificing punch burst out, it was directly shattered by a very powerful force. It caused violent shock ripples that spread out layer by layer. Body refining? Han Fei frowned slightly. This person's physique was extremely strong, even stronger than mine. Such a strong physique, such a fast speed, the other party must have walked many paths at the same time. After the first confrontation, Han Fei's heart shook, and the ultimate blade left his body, turned into the extreme speed, and rushed at the mysterious man. The ignorant are fearless. The mysterious man in black grabbed the ultimate blade with one hand, and Han Fei immediately felt the mutual attraction of the same path. At that moment, Han Fei felt as if he was about to lose the ultimate blade. This made him suddenly think of a terrible thing. The same path harvested each other, also known as harvesting leaks. This was what the old turtle said before. The same path was a process in which the strong harvested the weak. With this thought in mind, Han Fei immediately forcibly withdrew the ultimate blade, but the ultimate blade had already been entangled by the other party. Han Fei thought to himself, I spent countless resources and vitality to get the ultimate blade, so I can't let it be swallowed like this. Therefore, Han Fei leaped with golden light. The great Tao Convergence sword erupted, forcibly snatching the ultimate blade. Huh? The man in black seemed a little surprised, probably not expecting Han Fei's speed to be so fast. And Han Fei's speed was not the same as his, so he couldn't swallow Han Fei. However, when Han Fei withdrew the ultimate blade, he heard the heavenly demonic sound coming, layers of void ripples were resisting the great Tao Convergence sword, and the purple lightning was like a pillar, striking at the great Tao Convergence sword. Even so, it took the man 2 minutes to block the great Tao Convergence sword. At this time, if Han Fei still didn't realize what was going on, he would be a fool. He said, "You've cultivated all the great Taos you've cultivated before at the same time in your 5th life?" The man in black smiled slightly. Yes. Han Fei was surprised. So, cultivating multiple great Taos at the same time was a way to become an emperor? But if it was so simple, wouldn't people in the heaven opening stage start to cultivate multiple great Taos at the same time? How could there be so many people who couldn't achieve immortality at all? Therefore, cultivating multiple great Taos at the same time was definitely not the only way to become an emperor. At least, if the man in front of him was in his 5th life, then he also failed to achieve immortality in this life. He just took more great Taos. In the heavenly demonic sound, Han Fei said, "I've already experienced these great Taos of yours. Is there anything new? If not, it's my turn now." Haha! At that moment, a golden light burst out of this man's body. The next moment, he leaped and appeared dozens of kilometers away from Han Fei. Hiss! Han Fei's pupils constricted. Golden light leap? I've only used it once, but he's already learned it. Chapter 2018. Of course, Han Fei was stunned. If this person's learning ability was so strong that he could learn the golden light leap after seeing it once, how could he fight him? The black-clothed man charged at him again. There was wind and thunder in his fist, and the sound of wind and thunder was deafening. When he punched out, many kinds of great Taos merged. Han Fei activated his great Taos, but he was still blasted back more than 500 kilometers. When Han Fei flew out, he saw the man appear dozens of kilometers away from him again with a golden light leap. He pointed at Han Fei with 2 fingers and burst out Han Fei's original technique, the Great Tao Convergence Sword. Fuck! Han Fei was dumbfounded. It's fine if you learn my golden light leap. After all, your speed is really fast. But you learn my Great Tao Convergence Sword? That's too much. Facing the black-clothed man's Great Tao Convergence Sword, Han Fei also pointed with 2 fingers, and at the same time, the Great Tao Convergence Sword burst out. The 2 Great Tao Convergence Swords collided. It was not until this moment that Han Fei discovered that although they both performed the Great Tao Convergence Sword, the Great Taos contained in it were different. This made Han Fei breathe a sigh of relief. In other words, although the man opposite him could imitate the moves, he couldn't imitate the Great Tao. He was only using his own great path to unleash this attack. But even so, it was enough to shock Han Fei. Han Fei couldn't help but think of something. With a golden light leap, he tried to cross hundreds of thousands of kilometers directly. The black-clothed man also leaped with a golden light leap. However, the other party appeared a little too late. Han Fei smiled slightly. It turns out that you have just been running, not leaping. The black-clothed man didn't feel disappointed because Han Fei saw through him. He said, "Interesting, you and I are walking the same type of path." Han Fei scoffed. "Don't talk nonsense. I'm different from you. At most, I dabble in a lot of things." The black-clothed man looked at Han Fei with a smile. "Do you have any other great techniques?" Han Fei didn't respond but asked, "Are you dead or alive?" The black-clothed man didn't hide it. He said, "I'm just a mark. When the energy of the mark is exhausted, or I disintegrate on my own, that's when I dissipate. It's a pity that until now, there hasn't been anyone who can exhaust my energy." The man in black smiled faintly. Me? I've had enough fun. Next, I'm going to make my move. Han Fei's pupils constricted. You haven't really taken action yet? The two of them looked at each other, and almost at the same time, Han Fei leaped out with a golden light. The man in black didn't use the golden light leap again, but rushed at him at extreme speed. The two of them didn't use the Great Tao Convergence sword anymore. Instead, they used their fists to attack each other. Boom, 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 dong, dong, dong. In just a few seconds, Han Fei seemed to have been fighting for 30 or 50 seconds. The power of each of the two was almost equivalent to a sacrificing punch. The two of them fought from the void to the planet. In the end, they only saw the planet crumble and the world collapse. In just the fifth breath, a blue halo circulated in front of Han Fei. The power of the Great Path was about to run out. He had to reverse time and return to his peak state. But when Han Fei reversed time, he saw that the man in black rushed into time and tried to reverse time with him. Get lost. At that moment, Han Fei summoned the immortal spiritual energy and the ferocious qi in the origin sea and activated the divine baleful qi and the crafty time technique in an instant. Bam! The outbreak of the divine baleful qi finally made the expression of the man in black change. However, this person didn't seem to panic too much. Obviously, he knew these two powers. Therefore, in the face of the divine baleful qi, the man in black burst out mysterious yellow qi, turned it into a sword, and blocked the divine baleful qi. However, under the effect of the crafty time technique, the divine baleful qi actually broke out twice, so even the man in black couldn't help but take the divine baleful qi head-on. But because of his physique and speed, the divine baleful qi didn't seriously injure him, but only destroyed most of his body. When the powers intertwined, Han Fei returned to his peak state, and the man in black almost recovered. In this confrontation, Han Fei won by a narrow margin. But the man in black obviously changed his fighting style immediately. This time, Han Fei felt the boundless wind around him, and there was water mist in the wind, which was piercingly cold. In the ruins of the stars, countless Taoist patterns and arrays were fusing, and Han Fei seemed to be in a storm. Han Fei's face changed drastically. This man's power of the Great Path had changed again, which was so different from the battle just now that Han Fei couldn't react for a while. Swish in the ruins of the stars, a beam of light flashed, but it was a sword mark, and the Great Path Unification sword stabbed straight at Han Fei. Han Fei condensed infinity water on his fingertips, turned it into a knife, and barely blocked it. Then, Han Fei found that the bloodline in his body showed two opposite forms, and his spiritual energy instantly went out of control. Han Fei's body exploded, but the Gemini divine technique was activated simultaneously, turning into two mists, one black and one white. Then, not to be outdone, Han Fei activated the supreme yin-yang wheel, and the yin-yang pattern rotated above the man's head, trying to crush the young man in black. The latter grinned and said, "The great path of yin-yang? It's a pity that you haven't understood life and death yet." The man in black also turned into two figures, one black and one white, which fused like an awl and pierced the supreme yin-yang pattern. Puff! After a round of battle, Han Fei retreated quickly, bleeding from his eyes, nose, and mouth. With a thought, the Tianqi divine technique descended and was quickly repairing himself. "You also know the great path of yin-yang?" The man in black smiled and said, "Since you found that I cultivate many great paths at the same time, it shouldn't be difficult for you to guess." Han Fei was shocked. Yes, all the great paths of the 36 Xiantian realms were spread out in this imperial palace, right? The great paths that you treasure may have been used by others a million years ago. The degree of mastery may be even higher than yours. Han Fei found that perhaps only the Tianqi divine technique, the road of invincibility, and the great path of time could not be mastered by the man in black. Not only that, Han Fei was not in a hurry to reverse time, because he almost collapsed in time just now. Han Fei couldn't help but throw out a fishing hook and break through time. The man in black tried to stop him, but Han Fei punched out and the void lines crazily extended out. Although the black-clothed man was blocked, To Han Fei's surprise, the black-clothed man was able to catch a void line from the void. However, the man in black didn't attack the void lines, or he didn't know how to break Han Fei's void line. The man in black said, "Interesting. In terms of great paths and means, you are not bad. Unfortunately, if you want to achieve immortality, it's far from enough." At this time, Han Fei fished out the Empyrean ancient sword from the void. This sword appeared, one to attack the man in black, and the other to protect him and let him reverse time. Sure enough, when Han Fei reversed time again, the man in black burst out 3 sword auras at the same time, which looked very much like the Grand Pure 1-meter sword of the Grand Pure Palace. The 3 swords slashed at the Empyrean ancient sword. But in the end, it still gave Han Fei another chance to reverse time. After returning to his peak state again, Han Fei happened to see the scene of the Empyrean ancient sword exploding. Han Fei was shocked. Is it really so fierce? Although it was fished out, it was broken in the blink of an eye. Han Fei immediately retreated and continued to fish with his fishing rod. To Han Fei's surprise, the man in black didn't stop Han Fei from fishing but was curious to see what else Han Fei could catch. Once, twice, thrice, after fishing 5 times in a row, just when Han Fei was embarrassed and felt that the other party was going easy on him, Han Fei finally fished out a golden arm on the 6th time. The golden arm caught by the time fishing technique was completely obedient to Han Fei's command. Han Fei didn't let it parasitize him at first but only let it attack the enemy. Han Fei thought that this should be enough to give this man in black a headache, right? However, the man in black said, "You actually found my arm back?" Han Fei was surprised. Han Fei was dumbfounded. So it turned out that he had fished the man's arm back. But then Han Fei thought, if this golden arm belongs to this man, how strong is he? Could it be that he had already reached the peak of the heaven opening stage? So with just one arm, he can defeat anyone in the sea opening realm. Therefore, the man in black in front of him was indeed just a mark. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to survive until now. But since Han Fei couldn't defeat this man with his own strength, it would be a good idea to use his arm. Then it would be a good idea to use his hands. Han Fei used the Gemini divine technique again. This time, the white mist body directly pressed on this golden arm. Suddenly, Han Fei felt that the white mist body was about to explode, and a terrifying force swept through his whole body, directly reaching the upper limit of the power that his white mist body could bear. Han Fei thought that even if he operated the Great Tao, opened the Invincible Eye, and performed the Dragon Transformation technique, he wouldn't be as strong as he was now. Seeing this, the man in black on the opposite side couldn't help but fall silent. Interesting. I have to say that you are the strongest of these 13 people. You have seen the Tao of the 5th life. This opportunity is yours. Han Fei was ready to fight and used all his trump cards. Unexpectedly, the man in black on the opposite side gave up and didn't want to fight anymore, and his figure gradually dissipated, becoming more and more blurred. Han Fei said, "Hey. What's your name?" The man in black smiled faintly. "My name is not important. My name in the 6th life is Chu Hao." Han Fei was not surprised that the man in black dissipated. After all, how could a mark fight the real body? This golden arm could be preserved to this day only because it hadn't parasitized a strong master. He thought it was a battle of life and death, but it ended in this strange atmosphere. But where Han Fei was, he was still in the starry sky. When Han Fei looked again, he keenly discovered something. In the depths of the void, there was a futon floating. Uncontrollably, the demon purification pot flew out on its own. The return of the 6th small vine quietly began in this starry sky. Chapter 2019. At this time, Han Fei hadn't merged yet, because the golden arm was still in the body of white mist. Although the golden arm was completely under his control, he didn't know if the terrifying power would have any side effects, so Han Fei didn't merge with the golden arm immediately. And his state wouldn't affect the return of the 6th vine. The return of this vine seemed to be louder than before. Before the two intertwined, the whole starry sky was already shaking, and a huge amount of resources were gathering. Han Fei thought that if he merged with the vine in his origin sea, a lot of resources would probably be devoured. The demon purification pot was spinning, and the 5 vines on it were swaying and even growing. After about 100 minutes, the 6th vine finally returned. Swish! 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 The moment the vine returned, it pierced into Han Fei's body of black mist and the body of white mist at the same time, and then directly appeared in Han Fei's origin sea. As soon as the demon purification pot entered the origin sea, the entire origin sea was boiling, and a huge amount of energy rose to the sky and poured into the vine. Although Han Fei was a bit distressed, the rise of the demon purification pot was equivalent to his rise, so he could eat as much as he wanted. If he couldn't, he could find more resources after he left the imperial palace. The demon purification pot seemed to know where Han Fei's main resources were, so it quickly came to the batch of resources that Han Fei reserved for him. That batch of resources, to put it bluntly, added up to nearly 3 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones. After he came out of the Grand Purity Palace, he replenished a lot of them. Han Fei thought that according to the previous devouring speed of the demon purification pot, it should be able to devour for a long time. However, to Han Fei's shock, nearly 1,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones shattered every second, which meant that they were swallowing billions of points of spiritual energy every second. In this way, the demon purification pot could probably devour 15 million ultra-quality spiritual stones a day. These resources would run out in about half a year. Han Fei was shocked. Half a year. He planned to let the demon purification pot swallow these resources for decades. Why was it only enough for half a year? Besides, the time in the origin sea was accelerated. Half a year here was less than 7 days in the outside world. So, his massive amount of resources could only last 7 days? Are you kidding me? Not even 50 breaths of time had passed. The small vine in the demon purification pot stretched out with a swoosh and plundered the million black-yellow stones that he got from the skeleton jewelry. Han Fei. Han Fei said, "Hey, don't be so full. Let's eat slowly. Remember to leave some for me." Han Fei was really anxious this time. Different from the ultra-quality spiritual stones. As far as top-grade spirit stones were concerned, he had many sources. Even if he used his own resources to exchange for them, he would be able to exchange for a lot of them. However, he had only obtained a little more than 1 million pieces of black-yellow stone in this underground palace. If they were all swallowed by the demon purification pot, would he have been lonely after fighting for so long? About 5 minutes later, the golden arm disappeared, and the strength of Han Fei's white mist body dropped, so Han Fei performed Gemini as one. But at this moment, he could only wait. Within the origin sea, the demon purification pot was swallowing the mystic yellow stone, and Han Fei was playing with this jade slip, ready to read it. This jade slip appeared with the small vine. He didn't know if it contained any important information or cultivation methods. When Han Fei scanned it with his perception, he frowned, and as he read on, his face became more and more solemn. After a while, Han Fei's face was livid and his expression was extremely complicated. When he looked at the demon purification pot again, he sighed and let out a long breath. This jade slip was not a divine art or something like that. As he guessed, it was an important record. The record was about nothing else but the demon purification gourd. The content of the jade slip was witnessed from the first-person perspective of this emperor, namely Chu Hao. After reading the jade slip, Han Fei learned that Chu Hao had been an emperor for at least 2 million years. Because in this jade slip, it was written that 28 million years after he became an emperor, the gods roamed the Chaos Sea and found an ancient vine growing in the Chaos Eye in the depths of the Chaos Sea. The gods worked together to pull out the ancient vine, and the demon purification pot appeared. However, when the demon purification pot appeared, the Chaos Eye collapsed, as if the world collapsed and all Daos were overturned. Ominous things overflowed from the Chaos Eye, and darkness spread. The gods didn't care. After learning the great power of the demon purification pot, the civil war began. The War of the Gods lasted only 100,000 years, and the people were plunged into misery and suffering. In the end, the demon purification pot was divided among the 9 gods, and each got a vine. However, darkness spread, and in the darkness, there were creatures crossing the darkness and descending to the sea realm. The ominous war was born. In the ominous land, strong masters dominated, and some gods were defeated and died in the sea realm. Since then, the ominous war officially began. After fighting for more than 600,000 years, the gods built the eternal thunder purgatory to suppress the ominous. However, the ominous accumulated for a long time and became more and more powerful. The gods discussed and combined the demon purification pot to resist. After fighting for 60,000 years, a traitor was born, and the War of the Gods broke out. In the War of the Gods fought in the darkness. After fighting for more than 3 months, many gods died and never came out of the darkness. Only the demon purification pot was thrown out of the darkness, and I happened to get this treasure. However, in a hurry, the arch ambushed me, and the demon purification pot was damaged, and I was about to die, so I had to escape with the broken artifact. In the name of the Void Temple, I sealed this place, built the arch palace, and sealed the demon purification pot. I hope that there are heroes in the future who can reassemble the demon purification pot. Remember, although the darkness is there, the Thearcha's heart is unpredictable. If the gods don't come out, the ominous will always come. When Han Fei finished reading this record, he didn't feel good. It turned out that the demon purification pot was a treasure that the gods searched for in the depths of the Chaos Sea. It was because of it that the so-called ominous came. It was because of it that the twilight of the gods broke out. Even after the gods died, because of it, the arch fought because of it. Han Fei didn't know where the Chaos Sea was, but it was very dangerous. The demon purification pot had a total of 9 vines, and this was only the 6th one, which meant that at least 3 more vines were in the so-called sea realm. Therefore, holding the demon purification gourd was basically asking for trouble. As long as others found out. At that time, countless Tharch would want to kill him and snatch the demon purification pot. According to the description on Chu Hao's Jade Slip, the preaching of the Void Temple here was just a cover. It could even be said that Chu Hao had purposely made this place the place of inheritance of the Void Temple in order to protect this place, or to protect the demon purification gourd from being discovered. However, Han Fei didn't know whether the Void Temple knew about the existence of the demon purification pot. This was really hard to say. After all, the Chaotic Sea was also the place of inheritance of the Void Temple. There was a way to become a disciple of the Void Temple here. Would anyone pay attention to the Imperial Palace here? Besides, the Imperial Palace had existed here for tens of thousands of years. If there were experts in the same realm who knew about this place, wouldn't they want to see the Imperial Palace? Han Fei was horrified. He had a feeling that there was an invisible hand behind all this. Of course, Han Fei was more willing to believe that Chu Hao had arranged everything. Since he dared to protect this place with the help of the Void Temple, if the Void Temple could get it, they should have gotten it long ago. How could the demon purification pot fall into his hands? In short, no matter what, now that the demon purification pot was his, he couldn't let others know. Once this matter was leaked, even if the Arch knew, he would be in danger. Moreover, he had no choice but to be careful when dealing with someone at the venerable sovereign level. But the demon purification pot's target was the darkness, the ominous place, the place where the gods fell. Han Fei couldn't help taking a deep breath. Suddenly, he felt as if he was carrying the sky on his shoulders, and the pressure was so great that he almost suffocated. In the Origin Sea, the demon purification pot's demand for resources seemed to be extremely high. On the 132nd day, 1,000,000 mysterious yellow stones were swallowed up by the demon purification pot. After swallowing the mysterious yellow stones, it was not over. In another 182 days, the 3 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones that Han Fei specially prepared for the demon purification pot were swallowed up. Even then, the demon purification pot didn't stop. In another 200 days, the resources that Han Fei earned in the imperial palace were almost consumed up. Han Fei was about to cry. If this went on, he would have to live on his savings. His origin sea was built up with a massive amount of resources. The spiritual spring water, which was originally rushing like a river, had dried up half at this moment. On the 680th day, more than 21 days had passed in the outside world. The spiritual spring water in Han Fei's origin sea had completely dried up, and Little Black and Little White had no place to swim now. And the chaotic gas in Han Fei's origin sea had been swallowed more than 10,000 strands. The various mines, earth veins, and spiritual springs buried underground were almost drained, and the origin sea had already produced mist. This was clearly weakening Han Fei. It could be said that if the demon purification pot didn't stop, Han Fei's origin sea would be emptied. If the amount of resources in his origin sea was 100 portions before, now there was less than a quarter left at most. How many resources had Han Fei harvested since robbing in the chaotic sea? Today, nearly 80% of them were gone, and his heart was almost numb. But on this day, the demon purification pot finally stopped spinning. But immediately afterward, 6 small vines took root in Han Fei's origin sea, and the small vines grew more and more, finally forming a vine area. And where the demon purification pot was, the earth veins were transforming. Han Fei felt that the land of the origin sea had become extremely fertile and natural. And in the origin sea, a sky appeared, which refreshed Han Fei. Although he didn't know what it meant, wasn't it only the heaven-opening state could create a sky? When Han Fei scanned with his perception, he was immediately disappointed. It turned out to be just a kind of environment shaping, not a real sky. The origin sea still had limits. Puff! While Han Fei was disappointed, he found that countless cracks appeared on the earth veins of the origin sea. Then 2 small vines directly plunged into his body. Suddenly, the spiritual energy in Han Fei's body began to run in 2 completely different ways. At that moment, Han Fei seemed to realize something. His spiritual heritage was about to be unveiled. Chapter 2020. After waiting for almost a year and a half, the demon purification pot was finally full. Fortunately, he had so many resources for the demon purification pot to absorb. If it were a sea expansion realm king, it would take him thousands of years to save so many resources. In addition to feeling that his spiritual heritage was about to be revealed, Han Fei also saw that the 3rd fruit on the 5th small vine was also ripening at this moment. However, Han Fei didn't have time to be overjoyed, because there were now 2 kinds of spiritual heritage running in his body. Judging from Han Fei's inner vision, the circulation of these 2 parts of the spiritual heritage seemed to coexist in a situation where one was real and the other was virtual. Of the 2 kinds of spiritual heritage, one was turquoise, and some parts looked as pure as glass, which looked normal. However, the part of this spiritual heritage that was as pure as glass was relatively small, only about 1/10 of it. Most of them were like opaque turquoise, with a hint of whiteness in them. And the other kind of spiritual heritage was black all over, and some parts were blood red, and the blood red part was relatively small. It was probably only 1/10 of it. At present, in these 2 kinds of spiritual heritage, there was power rushing here and there, and endless spiritual energy was constantly scouring every part. Being scoured by this power, Han Fei subconsciously activated the void fishing art. He activated the technique and tried to absorb spiritual energy and other powers to scour them together. It felt like his nose was blocked and he kept inhaling, trying to get through the air pressure. More importantly, the 2 spiritual heritage were in the same situation. Han Fei didn't even need to look at his information to know that there must be something wrong with these 2 spiritual heritage. In the past, although he couldn't see, he didn't feel so blocked even though he couldn't see. Now he could see them, but he found that they were blocked everywhere. Only 1/10 of them were unblocked, and the other 90% were congested. Han Fei was speechless. This problem didn't occur when he was cultivating before. Why was there a problem everywhere now? Although he could still complete a circulatory cycle, he felt that it might take him an hour to complete a circulatory cycle in such a congested situation, although he could have completed a circulatory cycle in one breath's time. Only then did Han Fei realize that he had always thought that the efficiency of his cultivation technique was very high, but as soon as the technique was activated, he would be burned by heavenly fire. But in reality, he had been cultivating at an extremely slow speed all this while. Understanding this, Han Fei couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seemed like he had one more thing to do in the future, and that was to open up his 2 spiritual veins. Han Fei found it hard to imagine that his spiritual heritage was already in the category of heavenly heritage before it was opened. What would it be like after his 2 spiritual heritage were opened? Such a situation lasted for 3 days. Thanks to the efforts of the demon purification pot and Han Fei himself, the 2 spiritual veins had been opened by about 10% each. About 20% of them were opened in total, but they were still far from being fully opened. At this moment, the demon purification pot had retracted the vines and returned to its normal form. Han Fei finally regained his freedom. Looking at the misty origin sea, Han Fei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How long would it take for him to get it back? However, this thought only appeared for a very short time, because Han Fei's eyes had already looked at his personal information. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 96, sea expansion, 10,000 tribe tree in the sea, 980006 chaotic energy, 43495 spiritual power 810026 perception range greater than 850,000 kilometers strength greater than 301,560 waves first spiritual heritage a primordial spiritual heritage. Second spiritual heritage a spiritual heritage of eternal darkness first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 89, second spiritual beast emperor sparrow, level 91, main art, time fishing, level 8 of void fishing, emperor level, divine quality. Han Fei didn't pay attention to the data immediately, because the origin sea was in a mess now. It would be great if his power didn't drop. On the other hand, the 2 great spiritual veins had finally revealed their true names. Primordial spiritual heritage. Primordial spiritual heritage. Han Fei focused on the specific information of the 2 spiritual heritage. As a result, Han Fei's face immediately changed when he saw it. The primordial spiritual heritage, the beginning of chaos, the creation of veins, the beginning of life, one of the most mysterious bloodlines in history, ranked 800th on the 10,000 heritage divine list. With this spiritual heritage, one's strength would pour out, which was rare in the world. The speed of cultivation could be ranked at the top of the tens of thousands of clans in the sea. The primordial spiritual heritage, the beginning of nothingness, the end of death, one of the most mysterious bloodlines in history, ranked 3,000th on the 10,000 heritage divine list. With this spiritual heritage, one's strength would pour out, which was rare in the world. The speed of cultivation could be ranked at the top of the tens of thousands of clans in the sea. Han Fei frowned. Did he see it wrong? Were the origins of these 2 spirit veins so terrifying? One was ranked 3,000th, and the other was ranked 800th on the 10,000 heritage divine list. Didn't it mean that he was destined to be one of the fastest cultivators in the chaotic sea from the moment he was born? Unfortunately, he had always thought that it was the result of his hard work. When he cultivated the indestructible body, he felt that although his meridians hurt, they couldn't burst, so he thought that it was because his physique was strong enough. It turned out that it was all because his spiritual heritage was too high, very high. So even if he only had less than 1/10 of his spiritual heritage before, he could cultivate to this level in such a short time. Han Fei was speechless. The spiritual heritage was so good that he didn't know what to say. Han Fei could only tell himself that his spiritual heritage hadn't been opened yet, so his ranking was definitely not as high as the Great Path. But when his spiritual heritage was opened in the future, at least it wouldn't be difficult to become an immortal, right? Han Fei comforted himself and looked at the 3rd divine pill that appeared on the demon purification pot. This pill was called the Art of Infinite Transformation. It comprehended the great path of heaven, felt the impermanence of everything, and grasped the infinite changes, transforming into thousands of things in the world. To put it bluntly, this was stronger than the 72 transformations. He used to think how difficult it was for a human to transform into a fish and a fish to transform into a human. As a matter of fact, countless generations of people had devoted themselves to research in order to figure out this Tao. And this art of infinite transformation was even more powerful. He could transform into any creature he saw. This seemed to only play a supporting role, but if he added the Gemini divine technique, it could be said that his ability to escape had reached a terrifying level. Even Han Fei didn't know how to deal with it. Unless there was a magical pupil technique that was countless times more powerful than the fiery eyes, it might not be able to detect him. Besides, he could commit crimes in stealth and transform into other people without being noticed, so he had to learn this technique first. If he had learned this technique before, then when he was in the insect-tide forest, how could those low-level insects find him when he turned into a random insect? Comprehending the art of infinite transformation should be similar to the law of heaven and earth, right? If he took the divine pill, he should be able to master it soon. About 20 days had passed in the outside world. On the top of the bronze tree, the blue light ball broke with a pop. As soon as Han Fei appeared, he scanned with his perception and found that 4 of the blue light balls around him were missing. Besides, Han Fei keenly discovered that 2 of the blue light balls had changed positions. Although Han Fei didn't know if the disappeared light ball represented the death of a person. However, the light ball that had changed its position meant that 2 people had chosen to continue exploring after obtaining a certain treasure. The 2 positions changed, one was Bai Yu, and the other was Huang Jie. But anyway, no one had come out yet. Looking at the bronze tree, Xiao Chen's heart skipped a beat. He wondered if this bronze tree was the same place as the 5 graves ground. Han Fei couldn't help but take out the nautical panorama and cast the Gemini divine technique. With a thought from Han Fei, the nautical panorama began to rotate. However, to Han Fei's surprise, the nautical panorama pointed to the tree, which meant that some of the kings who participated in the treasure hunt had died, not the kings who died in the 5 graves land. Han Fei couldn't help frowning slightly. Forget it, I'm seriously short of resources now. I'm not interested in this tree full of treasures. Anyway, there was still a long time before the Imperial Palace opened, and he had plenty of time to continue to hunt for treasures. However, before that, he needed to get as many resources as possible back. Han Fei broke the void with a finger, and the black mist body drilled in and came directly to a vast sea. There was no land here, but the bottom of the sea was full of beaches, coral reefs, and holes full of seaweed. There were also various remains of crab shells and the like. In addition to these, there was a large number of deep-sea areas. Obviously, this was the origin sea of the squid girl of the Behemoth clan. From the looks of it now, he should be thoroughly dead. The origin sea of the squid girl was not small, more than 7,000 miles long and wide, and the color of the mist was relatively light. The origin sea was rich in resources, which showed that she was not weak. Although she had been hiding her strength, she died on this bronze tree before she could show it. Without Han Fei's order, the demon purification pot had already come out to work. Chapter 2021. In the Squid Girl's origin sea, the demon purification pot swallowed more than 6,000 strands of chaotic energy, which was really a lot. And the ultra-quality spiritual stones Han Fei found, plus various resources, added up to about 1 billion. This number couldn't be said to be small. After all, a king was worth so many resources. But compared to himself, these resources weren't considered much. Compared with the part of his origin sea that was swallowed by the demon purification pot, the harvest of the squid girl was not even enough to make up for 1/10 of his loss. However, Han Fei was not greedy. If one was not enough, there was still a second one. Just now, 4 blue light balls disappeared. Half an hour later. When Han Fei completely plundered the squid girl's origin sea, he slowly breathed a sigh of relief. In any case, he finally made up for it. As the nautical panorama rotated again, the target was still the bronze tree. It seemed that someone had died. When Han Fei broke the void again and went in with his black mist body, he found some ownerless souls here. After searching for a while, Han Fei found the map of the divine palace of the refining god Heaven, only to know that Su Yan had died. Alas, Han Fei sighed slightly. He had helped Su Yan several times, but Su Yan still died in the end. It could only be said that the 13 outer heavens were relatively in decline, and it was not without reason. If Su Yan died, the refining soul heaven would be leaderless. Han Fei didn't know if Su Yan left any backup methods before he came here. Han Fei collected the ownerless souls here and collected about 800 million worth of resources, which was quite a lot. After all, he had only been in the Imperial Palace for 3 years. How many resources could he consume? Therefore, these kings probably had their own considerations when they came here, such as how many resources they brought. The demon purification pot collected more than 5,600 strands of chaotic energy. Fortunately, the 10,000 strands of chaotic energy that were swallowed in his origin sea were finally made up for. But a lot of other resources were still missing. When Han Fei tried to find the origin sea for the 3rd time with the nautical panorama, although he still found it, it was not on the bronze tree but in the void outside the bronze tree. When Han Fei found this void, the 9 poison treasure silkworm in the depths of his divine soul moved, which meant that there was a residual poison here. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Huang Jie was dead. When Han Fei entered the 3rd origin sea, he was shocked to find that it was an ocean. Then, he sensed his surroundings. This could not possibly be Huang Jie's origin sea. Otherwise, there would be thousands of poisons everywhere. Since it wasn't Huang Jie's origin sea, it meant that Huang Jie had fought with this person. Furthermore, Huang Jie had won and this person had died. This person's origin sea was more than 26,000 kilometers wide. This was the largest origin sea he had seen apart from one Qingling. Moreover, this person also knew how to arrange the origin sea. The color of the mist was very light, clearly grasping some tricks. The moment the demon purification gourd appeared, it did not devour the chaotic aura immediately. Instead, it extended a small vine towards a large seaweed at the bottom of the sea. Han Fei frowned and immediately found something wrong. A beam of golden light leaped over, and the ultimate blade left his hand in an instant, slashing at the big algae. Puff, 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 seeing that the seaweed was cut up, Han Fei fused with little black and little white. He keenly noticed that a wisp of a soul was drilling into the earth vein. Han Fei immediately blocked the earth vein with the void lines. After finding this person's position, the ultimate blade went up and poked him. In just 2 seconds, this person's remnant soul was riddled with holes, and he finally revealed his true appearance. When Han Fei took a closer look, he couldn't help but be surprised. "Oh, it's you." Han Fei couldn't help but be amused. This person was none other than Zhou Bai of the Seabed Human Clan, rumored to be one of the top 10 powerhouses on the Sea Pioneer list. Now it seemed that the top 10 powerhouses didn't agree to old Huang Jie's request. Either this Zhou Bai was already seriously injured when he came out, and old Huang Jie took advantage of him. Or, old Huang Jie's strength was already very strong, beyond the scope of Zhou Bai's ability. Han Fei was more inclined to the second possibility. Although old Huang Jie looked like a dying man, in fact, the great poison he controlled might be able to kill someone at the heaven-opening realm. Han Fei was not surprised that Zhou Bai was defeated by Huang Jie. Instead, he took advantage of him. Zhou Bai was shocked. "Han Fei, how did you enter my origin sea?" Han Fei grinned and said, "You ask too many questions. Do you think I'll tell you?" Zhou Bai was terrified, but there was nothing he could do. He was being ravaged by the great poison. Otherwise, how could he exist in the form of a soul? At this time, no matter what, he had to restore his physical state. However, just as Zhou Bai was about to use the chaos qi to fuse with the surrounding energy, he discovered that the chaos qi was no longer under his control. He saw a gourd swallowing the sky and the earth. Han Fei grinned. What a pity. You can only blame your bad luck for running into me. With that, Han Fei issued an order in his heart, and the ultimate blade began to strangle crazily. Zhou Bai didn't even have a chance to dodge before his soul was pierced. To make sure that nothing went wrong, Han Fei searched with the void lines to make sure that Zhou Bai was dead, and then began to search for resources. Han Fei curled his lips. He thought that a powerhouse of Zhou Bai's level would have more resources. But after searching, he realized that he was overthinking. Since Zhou Bai had figured out the layout of the Origin Sea, a large number of resources must be arranged in the Origin Sea. The available resources were about the same as those he got from one Qingling, only 500 million. Of course, the excavation work of the Origin Sea was relatively more troublesome. However, Han Fei was short of resources now. No matter how difficult it was to excavate the Origin Sea, he had to do it. There were at least billions of resources in the Origin Sea. Wouldn't it be a big loss if he didn't excavate them? He dug for more than 6 hours. Han Fei continuously excavated resources from Zhou Bai's Origin Sea, reaching 2 billion. And when Han Fei dug to an underwater volcanic mountain, he found a demon essence core bead, which seemed to be the thing hanging on the bronze tree before. Zhou Bai's first target was this thing. He didn't expect that Zhou Bai didn't completely use this thing but left it in the Origin Sea. Name: Demon Emperor Niden. Introduction: An Emperor Niden obtained by killing a humanoid Emperor Sea Demon. Its energy can be absorbed to enhance the soul, enhance strength, comprehend the Great Way, and inherit the Demon Emperor's great technique. Level Emperor Quality Ultra Quality contains celestial spiritual energy greater than 392 wisps. Effect: refining and absorbing it can obtain the inheritance, enhance the soul, comprehend the Great Way, and gain strength. Han Fei curled his lips slightly. This thing was good, but in fact, it was of limited use to him. For one thing, he didn't actually need the inheritance of this thing, because it was not suitable for him. And among the people he knew, only Xia Shaochan was suitable for it. But Xia Shaochan didn't necessarily need it, because Xia Shaochan's future path might not be worse than this demon emperor's. Looking at its Great Way, it could only serve as a learning tool at most. Xia Shaochan definitely wouldn't accept the inheritance of this demon emperor. Therefore, Han Fei threw it into the Origin Sea. When Xia Shaochan appeared, he would give it to her. In addition to the Demon Emperor Niden, Han Fei obtained about 2.5 billion resources in total. The Demon Purification Pot absorbed 8,000 wisps of chaotic energy, so the amount of chaotic energy Han Fei had increased to 62,396 wisps. Unfortunately, the 3 chances of the Navigator had been used up today, which made up for the resources swallowed by the Demon Purification Pot. Fortunately, many kings died here. Otherwise, if he were to rob these resources, he didn't know how many places he would have to rob to get so many. Han Fei glanced at the bronze divine tree and saw that no one had come out. Although there were dazzling treasures hanging on the tree, he was not in a hurry to grab more treasures. Originally, in the Imperial Palace, Han Fei thought he had no chance to enter the Origin Sea, but it seemed to be different here. No rules could affect this place, not even perception. Therefore, Han Fei's black fog immediately entered his Origin Sea again and quickly replaced a large amount of waste resources with the more than 4 billion resources he looted. The essence of the earth veins he obtained before was guided to the entire Origin Sea by Han Fei. Because he got a large number of marine resources from Zhou Bai and the Squid Girl, Han Fei directly constructed the terrain within 50,000 kilometers to 60,000 kilometers into the sea. In this way, these resources would have a place to be stored. After almost an hour, the mist in Han Fei's Origin Sea finally dissipated by more than half, and the distribution of resources in the Origin Sea finally returned to about 40% of what it used to be. Although Han Fei still had no extra resources to use, there were still a lot of resources hanging on the bronze divine tree. Han Fei waited until the next day. One reason was to wait for the ability of the Navigator to be reset, and the other reason was to continue to look for the Origin Sea of other kings that died. The other reason was to find treasures that were more suitable for him on the bronze divine tree. Although there were a lot of rare treasures on the tree, he couldn't be blinded by them. Of course, he had to find resources, but he also had to find a way out. Chapter 2022. Han Fei was used to seeing treasures and resources. In the past, a high-quality pearl was a treasure, but now, hundreds of millions of yuan was not enough. Han Fei needed resources, but he also knew that the greatest opportunity was the way out. So, after reconsolidating the Origin Sea, Han Fei looked around. Above this void, stars were twinkling in the distance, and there was even a red moon in the sky. According to normal thinking, Han Fei could naturally think that the red moon might be the exit. Therefore, after a preliminary judgment, Han Fei immediately pointed to the exit with the nautical panorama. Sure enough, the nautical panorama pointed to the red moon in the sky without hesitation. Han Fei couldn't help but grin. The exit had been found, so he could continue to look for resources without worry. At this moment, the nautical panorama still had 2 chances to point. Han Fei let the nautical panorama continue to look for the origin sea of the remaining king. However, this time, to Han Fei's surprise, there was no origin sea. Wait. Han Fei couldn't help frowning. There were 4 blue light balls missing, but there were only 3 origin sea. This meant that one person had not died, and he was not here, so he must have left the bronze tree. In other words, one person had left the red moon. Han Fei's first thought was that Bai Yu had left, because the blue light ball where Bai Yu was had disappeared. Maybe he had gone to compete for another target. Or maybe he had gone out. As Bai Yu said, there was no shortage of treasures in the martial emperor city. Compared with Huang Jie, he was more likely to go out. Of course, it could also be someone else, but Han Fei was more inclined to Bai Yu. However, these were all his guesses. To be honest, Han Fei doubted that there was a person who could resist the temptation of the bronze tree, because he couldn't resist the temptation of the bronze tree. Since the nautical panorama couldn't point, Han Fei didn't bother to look for it. He was not worried that the person who left would go through the bronze door before him. If it was so easy to enter the Void Temple, he wouldn't have to go through the test again and again. Han Fei said in his heart, "Point to the most suitable resources for the expansion of my origin sea." This time, to Han Fei's surprise, the nautical panorama pointed to the east and then to the west. In the end, Han Fei found that there were dozens of directions that the navigator pointed to. Han Fei was confused. Which one should I choose? While he was hesitating, he heard the old turtle say, "Why don't we choose the mystic yellow soil?" Han Fei was surprised. Black yellow soil. The mysterious yellow soil that can make the origin sea more natural and gentle. The old turtle, that's right. Look at the yellow brick that looks like a brick 300 miles above you. That's it. Han Fei raised his eyelids. Isn't that a brick? The old turtle said, "Trust me, I am someone who has obtained black yellow soil." Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Don't worry, we can do it one by one." But Old Yuan, do you know anything about black yellow soil here? Is there anything more powerful? Let's make a mark first and take them one by one later. The old turtle pondered for a moment. I know quite a few. But if you want to take them one by one, why don't you uproot the whole tree? Didn't they say that someone had pulled it out before? Fuck. Han Fei had completely forgotten about it. Why didn't he think of pulling it out? It was because this bronze tree was too big, hundreds of thousands of miles high. It was really too big. Even if he pulled it out, he had no place to put it. Therefore, he felt that such a big tree couldn't be pulled out. However, who said that such a big tree couldn't be pulled out? Even if he couldn't pull it out, he could cut it open. Seeing this, Han Fei decided that since there was no one around, he might as well try to pull it out first. What if this tree was pulled out and the treasure fell? Then wouldn't he be rich? Old Han and his mother had done this before. Look, it was probably the 2 of them who got the demon purification pot out, right? Since someone had succeeded, Han Fei immediately rushed to the bottom of the bronze tree. In Han Fei's perception, the bronze tree was rooted in the void. Although he didn't know how it was rooted, it didn't stop Han Fei from trying to cut the void. Therefore, without hesitation, Han Fei activated the divine killing intent and slashed at the root of the bronze tree. Han Fei's purpose was clear, that was to break the void. The divine killing intent cut a huge crack in the void with terrifying power, but a strange thing happened. The power of the divine killing intent gradually disappeared in the void. But the bronze tree was fine, and Han Fei didn't even see its roots. It seemed that the place where the bronze tree was rooted shouldn't be the void of this world. Han Fei didn't find the roots of the bronze tree, so his strongest move didn't work. He immediately thought of the simplest and most common move, which was to cut the tree. Just like when he cut the 10,000-year-old big red trunk, he could cut the bronze tree into dozens of pieces, and the origin sea should be able to hold it. The infinity water turned into an endless huge wheel and slashed at the bronze tree. Hum, 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 clang, 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 crack, crack, crack. Han Fei really admired the hardness of the bronze tree. The infinity water cut it so violently, but the bronze tree was not damaged at all. On the contrary, the wheel formed by the infinity water collapsed and was full of cracks. Just when Han Fei felt that it was impossible to cut the tree, he decided to take it one by one. A layer of light blue air waves burst out of the bronze tree. This terrifying wave instantly collapsed the infinity water and sent Han Fei and the infinity water flying hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. Han Fei felt as if he had been run over by a giant wheel. He was sore all over and felt that his bones were about to be broken. At that moment, when Han Fei was about to rush back, a wave of air swept over, shaking him back tens of thousands of kilometers. And at this time, perhaps because Han Fei was far enough away from the bronze tree, Han Fei could see the true appearance of the bronze tree. Han Fei was surprised to find that it was not the bronze tree at all. It was clearly a large complex network of intertwined meridians, like the meridians all over the human body. However, before Han Fei could take another look, he saw the blue light curtain in front of him recede, and then Han Fei found himself exiting the starry sky and appearing on the ground under the starry sky. The bronze tree had disappeared without a trace. Fuck. Don't. Han Fei was shocked. What the fuck is going on? I just cut the tree twice. How did it hit me out of the starry sky? The old turtle was also dumbfounded and shut up, thinking that Han Fei must be furious. Sure enough, Han Fei roared, "Old Yuan, this is the umpteenth rotten idea you have come up with. If I fucking take the treasures one by one, wouldn't it be better for me? Huh? Such a large piece of black-yellow soil is gone. Shouldn't you let me fight for the treasures first?" Feeling Han Fei's anger, the old turtle couldn't help shivering. Well, it's just a suggestion. After all, someone has succeeded before. Han Fei said angrily, "Didn't I fail? Now, it's a tree full of treasures." A tree full of treasures. Han Fei felt that his heart was trembling and dripping blood. He had already planned to take the treasures one by one. How many would he get? The old turtle said, "In fact, I think that although there are many treasures on this bronze divine tree, not one person can take them without limit. Otherwise, once he is strong enough, he can take all the treasures. The Supreme Emperor will definitely set restrictions in this regard." Han Fei scoffed. Bullshit, the Supreme Emperor is obviously looking for an heir. There are so many treasures. If he doesn't give them to his heir, who will he give them to? Is he going to bless all living beings? Do you think the Supreme Emperor is stupid? The old turtle was a little guilty. It seemed that his argument was not convincing at all. But the old turtle immediately said, "Some of them survived. When you go out, look for them one by one. Let's just snatch the resources they got." Han Fei grabbed the nautical panorama. No way. I have to find a way to go in again. The nautical panorama immediately turned, and Han Fei followed the pointer and broke through the void at the fastest speed. Soon, he landed in a place that looked like an ancient jungle. Huh? Han Fei tried to use his perception to investigate, only to find that it was gone. This made Han Fei speechless. Where should he go in this dense jungle? Han Fei had no choice but to use the nautical panorama again. Golden light flashed, and after about 10 minutes, Han Fei came to the bottom of a giant tree. But the moment Han Fei saw this giant tree, he couldn't help but wonder why it looked so much like the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. At this moment, Han Fei felt that there was an extremely slight vibration in the tree. It seemed that the power of the battle was transmitted through the tree. After a moment, Han Fei saw that on this giant ancient tree, there were many venerables, who were fighting for a kind of tender yellow fruit wrapped in a thin gauze. Han Fei looked at the fruit in his hand, and information appeared in his eyes. Name: a Cloud Dream Fruit. Introduction. The fruit that grows on the Cloud Dream Divine Tree can improve the power of the soul, strengthen the bloodline, and have a chance of enlightenment. The best one can get the Cloud Dream Divine Technique. This fruit can be divided into 7 grades according to the number of leaves. The more leaves, the stronger the effect. The higher the position of this fruit, the better the effect. But this fruit is often guarded by exotic beasts, so it must be picked carefully. Level: Venerable Equality. Ultra Quality contains chaotic gas, 7 points. Effect: it can improve the power of the soul, strengthen the bloodline, and enlighten. Chapter 2023. The Cloud Dream Fruit in Han Fei's hand was only wrapped with 2 leaves. Obviously, it wasn't of a high level. Such a Cloud Dream Fruit didn't mean much to him. Chomp! Han Fei took a big bite casually and swallowed it as if it were an ordinary fruit. So, the nautical panorama should be pointing to the way out of this place. Only by leaving this ancient forest could he have a chance to find the bronze tree again. A moment later, when Han Fei saw a human demi-king fighting a demi-king, he knew that he had probably come to a place explored by demi-kings. This place was indeed very beneficial to half-step kings. The higher the grade of the Cloud Dream Fruit, the more primal chaos chi it contained, and the more spiritual strength it could increase. It would also strengthen one's bloodline, and it would also allow one to comprehend Daos. This was a shortcut to improve their comprehensive strength. Anyone who survived here and didn't die would be much stronger than ordinary demi-kings. If they left this palace in the future, they would be much stronger than ordinary demi-kings. And the only thing that could really help a demi-king transcend the tribulation and become a demi-king was the Cloud Dream Fruit of the highest level. Treasures of that level were definitely rare and couldn't be found in large quantities. Therefore, Han Fei guessed that this place might be just one of the many trial sites for demi-kings. As for the degree of danger, it was only a so-so. Han Fei shouldn't have been beaten to this place, but since he was here, it meant that he could pick a few of the highest Cloud Dream Fruits. He just needed to climb all the way to the tree. This difficulty couldn't stop Han Fei. At the highest point of the Cloud Dream Divine Tree, the trunk was naturally thinner and thinner. However, this place had become an ocean of demonic plants. As many as 1,000 kinds of weird demonic plants were attacking each other. At the highest point of the Cloud Dream Divine Technique, as many as 11 people were fighting each other. Among these people, except for a fatty who couldn't control demonic plants, everyone else could. Who else could this fatty be if not Lu Renquang? Lu Renquang was eating everything. 4 demi-kings were besieging him crazily. Lu Renquang roared, "Xiaobai, we can't go on like this. Why don't we use the things that Fei left behind?" Luo Xiaobai said, "Don't be hasty. Those people are not very strong. The bad thing is that they are all from the 100 Flowers Palace and are good at controlling demonic plants. Void Vine, do you have a way to take them away?" The Void Vine said in a sobbing tone, "Masters, I'm only a peak stage venerable one. Didn't the human king leave you some life-saving means? Use it." Luo Xiaobai said, "It's not time yet. If we use our trump card now, what will we use in the future?" Lu Renquang said, "Fine, I can kill one of them instantly with my full strength and force another one to come. Void Vine, get ready to snatch the dreamy cloud fruit at any time." Void Vine, understood. An orange-red light burst out of Lu Renquang's body, and a weird black box appeared with a sea-quelling bizarre treasure in his hand. Devouring demonic blade, fight, bang. Waves of air surged around Lu Renkuang, and with a swish, he cut the 5-kilometer-long vine into pieces. The 4 half-kings of the Flowers Palace saw this. Someone immediately shouted, "Restrain him." When the 4 of them exerted their strength at the same time, Lu Renkuang grinned. Deep blue fall. The void around one of the half-kings suddenly collapsed, and a terrifying suction force came from the void. The half-king was shocked and immediately shouted, "Give me a hand." The remaining half-kings of the Flowers Palace naturally went to rescue him. At this moment, the long knife in Lu Renkuang's hand turned into a bolt of lightning and swept across the sky. One of them was triggered, his body was torn apart, and his essence blood was sucked out. Appalled, the half-king activated his secret method, and the essence blood that flew out turned into burning fire thorns that charged at Lu Renkuang. But because of that person's mistake, there was a huge claw grabbing onto that half-North king. That person coughed up a mouthful of blood, and the huge claw unleashed a terrifying power that directly pulled that half-North king into the void. Then the void closed. At this point, Lu Renkuang's outburst hadn't ended yet. He held the knife with both hands, his body withstood the overwhelming fire thorns, and he rushed forward. At this time, the pure mystic body reflected his powerful physique, and the so-called powerful attacks of these half-kings couldn't shake Lu Renkuang at all. The longer Lu Renkuang accumulated his strength, the brighter the long knife in his hand became. Huh! Seeing the overwhelming vines coming at him, with all kinds of strange poisons and enigmatic barriers in front of him, Lu Renkuang knew that he couldn't break through. He slashed down, but it was hard to say whether he could kill them or not. Not good. Dodge. The guy who was targeted by Lu Renkuang turned pale. At this moment, the other person threw out a jade slip. The phantom of a king appeared. As soon as the king appeared, he quickly understood the situation of the battle, and a black demonic vine, like a divine spear, pierced directly at Lu Renkuang. Shoot! Lu Renkuang knew that he couldn't resist it, and a jade slip appeared in his hand. Do you think only you have the king's strike? I don't have it. Kacha! However, the jade slip was broken. In that second, a golden light flashed, and Han Fei appeared. Han Fei grabbed the vine spear and shattered the void with a backhand slap, shattering the shadow of Hua Qianyue, the palace master of the 100 Flowers Palace, effortlessly. Lu Renkuang shouted, "Did you see that? You bastard, the king of the 100 Flowers Palace, dare to fight against my brother? Believe it or not, I can even slap your king to death. If you know what's good for you, give up the cloud dream fruit." A woman on the opposite side shouted, "Humph. It's just a projection. I've already launched the king's strike. Let's see how many king strikes the 3 of you can use." Lu Renkuang couldn't help looking at Han Fei. "Fei, can you still fight? Let's mess with them a little more, and kill 2 more along the way." Bam! 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 However, the half-kings only felt a terrifying pressure coming, and the vines, fog, poisonous gas, and enigmatic barriers all collapsed. Under Han Fei's pressure, the remaining 7 half-kings were all knocked down. Someone from the 100 Flowers Palace shouted, "Not good, Demon Han's phantom still has power. Hurry up and use the king's strike." Swish, 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 3 jade slips collapsed, and 3 king's phantoms emerged. Lu Renkuang and the other 2 who were about to take the opportunity to rush over hurriedly stopped. The 3 of them immediately retreated behind Han Fei, and Luo Xiaobai also held a jade slip with a cold face. She estimated that Han Fei didn't use up the power of this strike, but if the opponent released 3 king strikes in a row, Han Fei might not be able to resist them. But then, as soon as the 3 king strikes appeared, Han Fei waved his hand. No one knew how Han Fei did it, but the 3 phantoms collapsed in an instant. They didn't even have the time to attack. Lu Renkuang and Luo Xiaobai looked at each other. The power of Han Fei's strike hadn't been consumed yet. Lu Renkuang immediately said regretfully, "I didn't know Han Fei's strike could be so strong. If I had known it was so strong, I wouldn't have thrown it out." The 7 people of the 100 Flowers Palace were also dumbfounded. Is Demon Han so strong? He just waved his hand casually, and the king's strike collapsed. Han Fei couldn't help but look at Lu Renquang. Do you want me to kill him? I'd better not kill him. In the future, the 100 Flowers Palace will surrender to us. Lu Renquang shook his head. No, you have to kill him. Anyway, you are just a projection. Alas, no, Fei Fei. Do you still have the strength to talk? Han Fei said, well, what if I tell you that this is my real body? Lu Renquang. Luo Xiaobai. The Void Vine. The people of the 100 Flowers Palace. Lu Renquang's fighting spirit disappeared immediately, but he still looked incredulous. Don't talk nonsense. Who are you fooling? Can this jade slip summon your real body? Han Fei said with a weird look, you're the only one who can. You really summoned my real body. Hum hum, 3 holy beams of light descended in a row, falling on Lu Renquang, Luo Xiaobai, and the Void Vine. The injuries on the 3 of them were recovering crazily. At this time, everyone finally found that something was wrong. Luo Xiaobai said, no, you are not a phantom. You are a real body. Han Fei said with a smile, I am a real body. Otherwise, the phantom image would be very big. At the very least, it would look scary. Lu Renquang was stunned. Wait, can this thing you gave us summon our real bodies? Then what if you summon us at some critical moment? Lu Renquang was still stunned, but Luo Xiaobai seemed to understand something. Although she was a little surprised why Han Fei was here, Han Fei's appearance was quite coincidental. The Void Vine completely stretched out and shouted at the opposite side, come on. Come on, all of you. Hurry up and hand over your resources, and the Cloud Dream Fruit, all of them. Han Fei smiled. That's fine. The people of the 100 Flowers Palace were dumbfounded. They didn't understand why Han Fei was here. However, when they felt the almost suffocating pressure, accompanied by a terrifying killing intent, they couldn't help but be horrified. Everyone was shocked. Who was Han Fei? He had slaughtered many people in the Pioneer Sea realm. How could a half-king resist the ghastly killing intent on his body? The Void Vine had gone to dig out resources, and Lu Renquang was still scratching his head and tilting his head to look at Han Fei. Fei! Are you really your real body? Han Fei said grumpily, I just came here by accident. I was about to find a way out, but you suddenly crushed the jade slip I gave you. How could I not come here? Lu Renquang exclaimed, there are people in the Pioneer Sea realm here. Luo Xiaobai nodded. It seems that you have encountered some problems. Han Fei nodded slightly. I did suffer a big loss, a huge loss, a bloody loss. Luo Xiaobai saw that Han Fei's face was twisted. Then it seems that you suffered a lot. Anything that could make Han Fei so agitated and resentful was definitely not a good thing. Otherwise, Han Fei wouldn't have shown up here. Han Fei glanced at the Void Vine and said lightly, leave some resources for them. Then Han Fei said to them, the 100 Flowers Palace will surrender sooner or later. Now, you shouldn't be enemies with the Yin Yang Heaven. This time, you learned a lesson. Next time, it won't be so simple. With that, Han Fei waved his hand casually, and the half-kings were sent flying tens of thousands of kilometers away. Chapter 2024. Han Fei was going to look for the highest level Cloud Dream Fruit after the nautical panorama was restored. However, he suddenly heard Lu Renquang's call, so he came directly to the place where the highest level Cloud Dream Fruit was. This was also the fundamental reason why Luo Xiaobai and the others wanted to compete with the people of the 100 Flowers Palace. At this moment, Han Fei killed the people of the 100 Flowers Palace, only to see the Void Vine return with a pile of Sun Moon shells and 4 Cloud Dream Fruits. The Void Vine was so happy that it was twisted. Han Fei took a look. The highest one was 5-leaf, and the others were 3-leaf. It seemed that the people of the 100 Flowers Palace didn't get many Cloud Dream Fruits. Luo Xiaobai said, on this tree similar to the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, this kind of fruit grows in many places. You can distinguish their age and effect according to the number of leaves. This 5-leaf fruit may be misled after being swallowed. If no one is guarding it, they won't dare to swallow it immediately under normal circumstances, so it was a good thing for us. Lu Renkuang nodded. They must have been too late. Otherwise, they would have eaten this 5-leaf fruit a long time ago. Han Fei looked at the battlefield in the distance, where there was a barrier emitting a green jade luster. At this moment, the barrier had been mostly broken and covered with cracks. It seemed that a great battle had taken place there. Luo Xiaobai said, "There is a 7-leaf spiritual fruit over there. There was a flood dragon in the Pioneer Sea state guarding it, but it was killed by us. But maybe because we made too much noise, we attracted the attention of the people of the 100 Flowers Palace." The Void Vine hurriedly said, "Yes, in this environment, even if they don't have perception, their detection ability is much better than that of the people of the other immortal palaces." Han Fei said in surprise, "You haven't got it yet?" Lu Renkuang said, "We'll get it soon." "Fei Fei, have you eaten this fruit? Let's each have a try first." Han Fei shook his head. "I've already eaten it. It's not of much use to me." Han Fei glanced at the 5-leaf cloud dream fruit, only to find that it could only provide 101 strands of chaotic energy. He estimated that the 7-leaf cloud dream fruit could provide 500 strands. But even so, the effect of the cloud dream fruit on him was still too low. Luo Xiaobai nodded. "Then please protect us." Han Fei waved his hand and the ultimate blade shot out. Luo Xiaobai and Lu Renkuang didn't see what happened. They only heard a few clangs on the green jade barrier, and then the green jade barrier broke. The Void Vine exclaimed, "It's broken so easily." Lu Renkuang was helpless. "Fei Fei. How did you attack? Why can't we see it?" Everyone flew over. Luo Xiaobai controlled the demonic plant, picked the 7-leaf cloud dream fruit, and brought it over. Then she saw the ultimate blade floating in front of Han Fei and was quite curious. Han Fei said, "I got a divine weapon here. It's just a little faster. There's nothing special about it." "Pfft, divine artifact." Luo Xiaobai rolled her eyes. She really couldn't stand Han Fei's pretentious face anymore. The Void Vine was extremely envious. A human sovereign had already obtained a divine tool. Were there so many resources in the Imperial Palace? Lu Renkuang couldn't help drooling. Are there many divine weapons of this level in this Imperial Palace? The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. It should be a lot, but it's still a little dangerous. This saber only killed Ji Xian in a few breaths of time. Luo Xiaobai, Lu Renkuang shrugged. "Then forget it. I think this environment is quite suitable for us." Luo Xiaobai said helplessly, "Put away your divine weapon and protect me." Han Fei chuckled. "Hey! You guys eat." The cloud dream fruit was of little use to Han Fei, but it was very useful to Lu Renkuang and Luo Xiaobai. Especially Luo Xiaobai, this exotic spiritual fruit was a great tonic for her, so the 7-leaf cloud dream fruit must be hers. More than 2 hours later, the three of them woke up one after another. The moment Luo Xiaobai woke up, everyone felt that there was a sudden change in the surroundings. They seemed to be in the wilderness, surrounded by clouds and mist, and in the depths of the clouds and mist, there seemed to be a big tree growing vigorously. But this strange scene disappeared after only a few minutes. Han Fei keenly noticed that this seemed to be a kind of Tao. "Sure enough," Luo Xiaobai said, "the stronger my Tao heart is, the stronger my strength should be by 30%. Lu Renkuang and the Void Vine were surprised. "So much improvement?" Luo Xiaobai nodded. "That's how it is. If you understand it, you will understand it." Han Fei was deep in thought. The tree just now should be the key to Luo Xiaobai's strength. But Han Fei didn't need to ask. He just said, "The late stage of the Imperial Palace is very dangerous. If the next place is the same as here, you should explore it slowly. Don't rush. Don't set foot in the king's realm. Feeling that Han Fei was serious at this moment, Luo Xiaobai couldn't help but frown slightly. You shouldn't be here. What happened? Lu Renquang also said, yes. I'm also curious. You can get a divine weapon. Why are you here? Alas, Han Fei heaved a long sigh. Speaking of which, this is a wrong choice I made. Blah, blah, facing Lu Renquang and Luo Xiaobai, Han Fei had nothing to hide. Besides, since they had encountered each other, of course he had to tell them about some dangerous areas. So Han Fei started from the insect-tide forest. Of course, Han Fei omitted the infinity mirror. He just talked about the danger of the places he had experienced and the people he had met. When the three of them heard this, their hearts jumped in fright. The void vine trembled all over. What? More than 10 kings have died? Lu Renquang asked, is that golden arm really so powerful? Killing a king with one punch? My goodness, so this emperor palace wasn't prepared for us half-monarchs, right? Han Fei said, so, when you feel that the danger is getting greater and greater, and you can no longer rely on talent and trump cards to survive, you'd better choose to retreat to a safe place. A true crisis was a narrow escape from death. Even here, the flood dragon you just killed is probably not simple, right? When I came, I found that the three of you were actually seriously injured. Luo Xiaobai nodded. Yes, that flood dragon has the strength of the pioneer sea state. With the combined strength of the two of us, we used a secret technique to shatter 6 supreme-grade divine weapons before we managed to grind it to death. Han Fei said, so, even this relatively safe place is so dangerous. You can imagine the danger in the depths of the palace. I wonder where Zhang Xuanyu and Xia Shaochan are now. Luo Xiaobai said, Shaochan has already been in the pioneer sea state. According to your experience, she shouldn't appear in the same place as us. At least, you are the first foreign pioneer sea state powerhouse we have met. Han Fei said, so I have to find the bronze tree. You may not believe it, but you have to see it with your own eyes to know how many treasures there are. However, Luo Xiaobai took a deep look at Han Fei and said, I think you don't have to look for that tree. Huh? Han Fei was stunned. Not only Han Fei, but even Lu Renquang and the Void Vine were stunned. Lu Renquang was surprised. Why not? Those are all ultimate treasures. However, Luo Xiaobai shook her head slightly. Treasures are not necessarily ultimate treasures. Just in this forest where we are, the probability of dying is not small, right? So in the end, we all gathered on this big tree. Obviously, this is more like an experience or an assessment. And what Han Fei experienced was obviously the inheritance of the Supreme Emperor's 5 reincarnations. Although many kings died, the Supreme Emperor must have thought of this when he set up this risk. He just wanted to pick out the people who could get his inheritance. As Han Fei said, there are so many treasures on the bronze tree. Once there are so many treasures, they are no longer unique. They can only be said to be a kind of high-level resource of the same level. In the depths of this palace, there must be something more advanced than them. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, what do you mean? Luo Xiaobai asked, didn't you say that when you came out of the illusion of the bronze tree, you found that someone should have taken the initiative to leave? Han Fei was puzzled. Yes. Luo Xiaobai said, those who achieve great things don't scheme with others. You should not look at why others stay there, but think about why that person left. No matter who this person is, why can he resist such a great temptation and choose to leave? Han Fei was shocked by Luo Xiaobai's words. Yes. Why did someone leave in advance? Was it because the things on the bronze divine tree were not good enough? Every single treasure in that place was something that countless people yearned for even in their dreams. Luo Xiaobai said, from the location of the Half-King and the Sea Expansion Realm, we can tell that the areas we are training in are different. It was just an accident that you came here. I guess that even if you act with us now, you must leave the place where we are training for some special reason. Luo Xiaobai calmly analyzed, and whether it is the half-king or the sea expansion realm, there is only one purpose here, which is to accept the inheritance of the imperial palace. Because there are very few inheritors, the probability of dying here is very high. Because the heaven-opening realm experts can't come in, we can even conclude that there may be a power in the underground palace that can stop the heaven-opening realm experts. This means that the sea expansion realm is the highest tolerance level for the trial of the imperial palace. This also means that only the sea expansion realm experts have a chance to get the real inheritance of the imperial palace. Han Fei asked, "The real inheritance of the imperial palace?" Luo Xiaobai said, "The Supreme Emperor built the imperial palace to pass it on to future generations. Do you think he will spread the news of the entire the Arch Palace?" Wow, Lu Renquang, Han Fei, and the Void Vine all gasped. Hearing Luo Xiaobai's words, everyone felt that it was very likely. Han Fei also felt that it made sense. Otherwise, why would the Supreme Emperor set up an imperial palace here? Did he really have nothing better to do? Chapter 2025. One day later. The nautical panorama was restored. Han Fei naturally wouldn't stay here, and Luo Xiaobai was no longer interested in this place because she had already obtained the highest level 7-leaf cloud dream fruit. Han Fei also searched with the nautical panorama, and the result made everyone realize that there was only one 7-leaf cloud dream fruit, which was the one that Luo Xiaobai swallowed. After discovering that the 7-leaf cloud dream fruit was so rare, Han Fei didn't even use the nautical panorama. He just found a branch that pierced through the void nearby. It seemed that the initial design of the imperial palace had already considered the ways to enter and exit the major dangerous places. Han Fei entered the void with Luo Xiaobai and the others, and Han Fei also gave each of Lu Renquang and the others a jade slip with a full-strength strike. If he gave too many of these things, it would consume his soul and essence blood. As for the resources consumed, he didn't care, but if his soul power was consumed too much, it would be detrimental to his cultivation. Generally, if he didn't have a good relationship with them or valued them, he wouldn't give them to them casually. The four of them stepped into the void. As soon as they stepped in, the entire dark void trembled, and a void storm suddenly rose, trying to engulf the four of them. Han Fei was shocked. It's the power of the Pioneer Sea State. Han Fei didn't dare to be careless. He directly cut open a void storm with the Dao Unification Sword technique, and then pulled out a large void crack with the draw technique, stabilized the exit, and then pushed the Luo Xiaobai and the others out with a palm. In the end, Luo Xiaobai said, "My guess is right. You shouldn't meet us for a while. Don't worry about the bronze tree." Before Luo Xiaobai finished speaking, the two sides completely separated. When Han Fei reappeared, he was in a white cloud, and in this cloud, there was a white jade stone road, no more than 3 or 5 meters wide and endless long. Beside the entrance of the path, there was a puppet standing at the moment. The reason why it was called a puppet was that its skin had dried up, but its flesh and blood were not rotten, and its eyes were still pale and dull. Even so, it couldn't change the appearance of this puppet. Clatter clatter. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the path. He could vaguely hear the sound of surging waves on the other side of the path. At that moment, the bulky puppet spoke in a stiff voice, "The participant's strength has exceeded the normal trial's range. To avoid affecting the normal trial, you will enter the ultimate trial directly." Han Fei. Han Fei was speechless. Is this the final trial? I didn't even need to find the way, as I directly pulled myself over for the final test. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, if I pass the ultimate trial, will I be able to control this imperial palace? However, the puppet didn't speak at this moment, as if it didn't hear him at all. This made Han Fei wonder if the puppet had its own consciousness. Han Fei asked again, "You have to tell me what this path is, right? Where does it lead to?" The puppet still didn't speak. Han Fei asked a few more questions tentatively, but the puppet didn't respond. Even its gray pupils didn't move at all. Han Fei knew nothing about this so-called ultimate trial. Han Fei couldn't help but take out the nautical panorama and said, "Find other exits here." Who knew if this puppet's appearance was good or bad? Who knew if this path would lead to that ultimate smelting trial? No matter whether he wanted to go or not, he had to see if there was a way out first. However, the nautical panorama didn't turn at all. Han Fei asked, "Where is the ultimate trial?" Crack, crack, crack. The nautical panorama pointed directly at the path. Han Fei's eyelids twitched slightly and he asked again, "What is the purpose of my trip?" The nautical panorama trembled slightly and still pointed at the path, unchanged. Although the effect of the nautical panorama had been used up 3 times today, Han Fei relaxed. He just had to wait one more day. Since he had come to this so-called ultimate trial, he was not in a hurry. Han Fei sighed slightly, just a little regretful. He missed the bronze tree, and Luo Xiaobai's explanation was right. But his resources couldn't be replenished, which was the biggest headache for Han Fei. He missed the source sea of so many kings and lost a lot of resources in vain. Otherwise, all of them might be enough to make up for his loss. Now, even if his strength was at its peak, his resources were still insufficient. He hoped that the next final trial wouldn't require him to consume too many resources. The next day. Since the puppet dragged Han Fei here, it didn't say a word except to tell him why he was here. At this moment, Han Fei was already standing at the entrance of the narrow cloudy path. When he was about to step on the path, he heard the puppet suddenly say, "Once you step on the endless corridor, there is no turning back." Han Fei smiled faintly, shook his head, and stepped into the path. Han Fei thought, "Is it useful to tell me this now? Do I have any other way to go? Since there is no other way, isn't it nonsense? Only in this place could one know the horror of the so-called final trial." As soon as Han Fei stepped in, he found that the path in front of him had disappeared. Half a foot in front of him was the fog, and he couldn't perceive anything. He couldn't even see his own fingers. His eyes were meaningless here. Han Fei looked back, and there was indeed no path. It was as if he was standing alone in the fog. When Han Fei looked back, his pupils suddenly constricted, and the fog around him turned into a weird illusion. This was actually the road to the Thug Academy in the Blue Sea Town. In front of him, Luo Xiaobai and the other 3 were walking side by side. Xia Shaochan looked back at Han Fei and said, "Come on, we're almost home." Han Fei's mouth twitched. Isn't this bullshit? This is such a lousy illusion. However, when Han Fei stepped into this illusion, he had a feeling that his feet were on the ground and it was extremely real. This feeling terrified Han Fei. If he really followed them back to the Thug Academy, what would he do? Of course, Han Fei wouldn't test it blindly. So, fortunately, Han Fei waited one more day before coming in, waiting for the navigator to reset. Han Fei took out the navigator. Where's the way? However, the navigator spun randomly a few times, and in the end, the pointer pointed at Han Fei for the first time. Huh. The way is with me. Han Fei knew that the navigator couldn't point out the direction, or it would directly lead him away from here. But since the navigator pointed at him, there might be another possibility. That was, if he wanted to pass this road, he had to rely on himself. While Han Fei was in a daze, the environment around him changed again, and this time he appeared in the seaweed wall of the level 3 fishery. He could even feel that the seaweed touched him, which was extremely real. In front of him, illusions kept appearing, but the original road was gone. Han Fei simply closed his eyes, blocking his vision and even his sense of touch. But even so, Han Fei still heard the sound of the tide. Fortunately, Han Fei directly blocked his 5 senses and 6 senses. He sneered. This was nothing more than trying to disturb him through these illusions. Han Fei stepped forward, not noticing, not hearing, not seeing. This made Han Fei feel like a wandering soul, as if drifting in the void. But after moving forward for only 100 steps, Han Fei always felt that something was staring at him and even wanted to kill him. This feeling was very strong, which forced Han Fei to open his eyes. At the moment Han Fei opened his eyes, he saw a golden arm coming at him. Fuck, the murderous intent, the pressure, and the power that triggered his blood were extremely real. Just when Han Fei was about to counterattack, something suddenly occurred to him. Wait! How could this golden arm appear here? And the surrounding environment? Isn't this the land of 5 graves? Is it fake? Han Fei had a plan in his heart, and his shock turned into confidence. He sneered. It's just an arm. What kind of bloodline, spiritual heritage, and talent do I have? How can I be afraid of you? Even if I stand still, what can you do to me? Han Fei grinned and opened his arms, not intimidated at all. Bam! Han Fei was 100% sure that this thing was fake. Even if it was real, did he learn the pure mystic body and the void fire refining technique for nothing? Han Fei sneered. I thought you had some new tricks, but a fake is a fake after all. Bam! However, at the moment when the golden arm hit Han Fei only felt that his soul was trembling, and his body was covered in blood and cracks. The power of this blow almost shattered Han Fei, and his 5 senses and 6 senses that had been sealed quickly returned. Huh? Really? Han Fei didn't believe it was true, but it was an indisputable fact that he was almost killed. No, it's still fake. Although he felt the crisis of death, Han Fei knew that everything was fake. He knew it from the moment he saw the land of 5 graves just now. However, could the illusory scenes here turn into real attacks? The apocalyptic divine technique descended, and Han Fei punched back the golden arm. Although a mouthful of blood was sucked, Han Fei recalled the sentence of the puppet, once you step on the endless corridor, there is no turning back. Chapter 2026. After Han Fei was punched by the golden arm, he was horrified. Why couldn't illusions kill people? Swish! Han Fei flipped his hand and threw out the ultimate blade, blocking the golden arm with the ultimate blade. As a low-quality divine weapon, the ultimate blade was naturally extremely powerful. Han Fei couldn't think of a few people in the sea expansion realm who could resist it. Even in the face of the golden arm, Han Fei didn't think the ultimate blade couldn't stop it. Clank, clank, clank! Sure enough, in an instant, the golden arm suffered thousands of attacks from the ultimate blade. And Han Fei quickly picked up the fishing rod, broke through time, and fished from the void 6 times in a row before he finally fished out a golden arm. Gemini Divine Technique. Han Fei activated the Gemini Divine Technique and replaced his white mist body with a golden arm. At that moment, Han Fei felt that he was invincible. However, when Han Fei felt that he could fight the golden arm and wouldn't be defeated at all, with a pop, the golden arm that was being strangled by the ultimate blade burst and disappeared like a bubble. Huh? Han Fei frowned. Are you kidding me? As soon as I was ready, the illusion of the golden arm disappeared. Han Fei seriously wondered if someone was deliberately manipulating all this behind the fog. Han Fei couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. If someone was watching him, wouldn't he have exposed all his trump cards? Han Fei said, Old Yuan, what do you think of this fog? The nautical panorama is useless. Do you have any ideas? And at this time, the old turtle's voice sounded leisurely, do you dare to listen to my ideas now? Han Fei said grumpily, it's not your fault. I was too greedy. I also felt that the probability of success was very high. I just accidentally screwed it up. At this time, it was time to listen to the opinions of the seniors. Although the old turtle was also only in the sky expansion realm, even if he might have slept for 1,000,000 years, he should be more knowledgeable than Han Fei. After hearing Han Fei's explanation, the old turtle said, actually, I don't know what you are fighting with. From this king's independent vision, you are just randomly hitting the fog. But you were indeed heavily injured by something in the fog. Are you saying that I'm hitting randomly? The old turtle said, at least from my point of view, that's the case. But this empress can't see through this fog, so I can only offer a guess. What speculation? The old turtle, from the moment you set foot on this path has ceased to exist. How can you be sure that the path you saw outside exists? What do you mean? The old turtle said, I think that what the eyes see isn't necessarily the truth. The road you saw outside might not be real, and the fog you see here might not be real either. You need to comprehend it on your own. What I say and what you comprehend are two completely different concepts. Old Yuan, you actually know what's going on, don't you? The old turtle was silent. You have to comprehend it. Once you do, you will be able to pass this trial in the blink of an eye. Han Fei couldn't help but ponder over what the old turtle meant. What the eyes saw was not necessarily the truth. So suppose that the road he saw outside was fake, and then suppose that the fog he saw here was fake. If these were all fake, then where was he? Since they were all fake, why should he make a path for himself? Wait. Is this the path in the popular sense that I understand? Path. The yellow mud road is also a path, and the path of the Great Way is also a path. What is this path exactly? What should I comprehend? If all this is fake, then the so-called path actually does not exist. Why can't I see through what the old turtle can see at a glance? Han Fei couldn't help but think that the nautical panorama pointed to him, which meant that this path was in him. Just like the old turtle said, he had to walk out by himself. Wait, why should I go? Since this path does not exist, why should I take it? The path is the Tao. If I comprehend it, I will pass it. Does the Tao refer to the Great Way? Standing alone in the fog, Han Fei pondered for a long time. Suddenly, he raised his head. The Tao heart. Han Fei suddenly woke up. Since he became the queen, he had been talking about the Tao heart to Xia Shaochan and the others. Although they didn't understand, he explained it over and over again. How could he have forgotten about it when he got here? A smile gradually appeared on the corner of Han Fei's mouth. Comprehending the Tao, in the end, only the Tao heart was left. His Tao heart was firm, like an invincible heart, fearless. Han Fei's temperament suddenly changed from confusion to calmness and indifference, showing a huge contrast. No wonder the old turtle didn't panic at all. He even described a half-truth story to him. Indeed, if the old turtle said it directly, it would be a little bit boring. But what he comprehended was peace of mind and fearlessness. Therefore, when Han Fei's mind was clear, he didn't care about the fog at all. He strode forward, calm and composed. He no longer sealed his five senses, letting the fog illusions around him continue to evolve. But none of them could touch Han Fei, and with every step Han Fei took, they automatically disappeared. After only 30 steps, Han Fei's eyes suddenly opened up. Clatter clatter. At this time, Han Fei heard the sound of waves. It turned out that in Han Fei's field of vision, there was a sea. The sea breeze blew his cheeks, and Han Fei could even see some common low-level shells on the beach. Of course, Han Fei's attention was not on this, but on a mirage on this sea. Han Fei was sure that he didn't see it wrong, but a mirage might be a bit ridiculous. Whose mirage was a huge bronze gate? This gate stood in the distant sky and covered half of the sky. If it wasn't the Void Temple's bronze gate that covered half the sky, what else could it be? Oh! The ultimate trial? Is this the ultimate trial? Han Fei couldn't help wondering if Chu Hao was once a member of the Void Temple. The more Han Fei thought about it, the more likely it was. Otherwise, why would the entrance trial of the Void Temple appear in the chaotic ocean? Otherwise, why would the bronze gate of the Void Temple become the ultimate test of the Imperial Palace? The bronze gate, as usual, was in the sky, but Han Fei could still see the misty stairs below the bronze gate on the blue waves, descending from the sky. Han Fei's eyes lit up. It was indeed difficult to comprehend the Taoist heart. Furthermore, the steps weren't easy to climb. Regardless of whether it was easy or not, he had finally seen the last trial of the Void Temple. If Han Fei's guess was right, there shouldn't be other trials of the Void Temple in the chaotic ocean. Otherwise, it would be stored in the Void Temple. Han Fei didn't consider why the Void Temple appeared on the distant sea. Anyway, it was only a short distance, and he could cross it with a golden leap. Therefore, without any hesitation, Han Fei really leaped and flashed out. However, when a golden light flashed, Han Fei appeared in midair above the sea, and his face suddenly changed. Because it was such a short distance, but he couldn't cross it with a single leap. It didn't make sense. Besides, when Han Fei looked back, there was already a vast ocean, and he couldn't see where he came from. Son of a bitch. I was too careless. I should have known it wouldn't be so simple. At this moment, Han Fei became vigilant. He saw a sharp claw in the sea, like a giant shadow emerging from the bottom of the sea. It was tens of thousands of meters long and seemed slow, but it was actually very fast. Han Fei's instinctive reaction was to fight. But when the huge claw was almost in front of him, and the wind was whistling in his ears, Han Fei narrowed his eyes, activated the Tao, and strengthened himself with the invincible will. He didn't move and let the claw cut down. Unfortunately, Han Fei guessed wrong. Almost in an instant, his body was split in half. This time, he didn't use the Gemini divine technique. He was really split in half. However, in the void, a blue light flashed, and Han Fei's collapsed body walked out of time. At this moment, Han Fei looked solemn. A casual blow is the power of the heaven-opening state. Because Han Fei didn't read anything from the demon purification pot, he dared to take the blow head-on. Since the endless corridor ahead tested the Taoist heart, why didn't it test here? What if the venerable emperor's prank was to mislead people into thinking that the trial in this sea didn't test the Taoist heart? However, Han Fei accidentally lost the gamble. But even if he lost, Han Fei could still reverse time, so he didn't panic. The demon purification pot can't read anything? It shouldn't be. Unless this thing is fake. Thinking of this, Han Fei shouted, "Fuse!" Little black and little white fused, and the yin-yang divine eyes appeared. After Han Fei landed on the sea, he flickered and appeared on the bottom of the sea. No matter how big this behemoth was, could it be bigger than the behemoths? They were hundreds of kilometers in size and were the real behemoths in the sea. When Han Fei appeared on the bottom of the sea, he saw a huge, indescribable strange creature, like a huge sunflower, facing him with its huge sunflower face. Below the sunflower, there were giant vines covered by demonic plants such as rattan algae and sea anemones. Around the sunflower, there were 5 huge eyes, each of which was dozens of kilometers long. On the face of the sunflower, there were dense sunflower seeds, and a black hole in the center. Swish! 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 The sunflower seed-like fruits turned out to be the claws that attacked him just now. Now, a dozen of them popped out at once. Fuck. Chapter 2027. A giant demon in the heaven-opening state. Han Fei frowned. Judging from the power of the blow just now, this demon plant definitely had the combat power of the heaven-opening state. However, it was hard to say whether this demon plant was real or not, because the demon purification pot didn't read any information about it. But was this thing fake? It might not necessarily be fake. Just like the golden arm he encountered, even if it was fake, it could still hurt him. And this sunflower, even if it was fake, could still cut him in half. Han Fei activated his Tao and activated the invincible eye. Of course, there were strong and weak ones in the heaven-opening state. Han Fei knew that he barely had the power of the heaven-opening state at present. However, this was enough. One was physique strength, one was strength, and the last was speed. However, in terms of comprehensive strength, Han Fei was still far from the heaven-opening state. However, this didn't prevent Han Fei from fighting first. When he saw this sunflower, Han Fei also understood the way to the bronze gate. It must be the black hole in the center of the sunflower's big face. If he could go to the bronze gate, he would have gone there a long time ago. Did they really want to stop him by setting up a heaven-opening state demon plant in the sea? No, the puppet said that his strength was beyond the scope of ordinary trials, so it directly caught him for the ultimate trial. That meant that the ultimate trial corresponded to his level of strength. The top 10 in the chaotic ocean sea all had the power of the heaven-opening state, and he was even more powerful than that. Therefore, Han Fei guessed that the existence of this demon plant was just to test his basic strength. Swish, 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 the dozens of blades that looked like sunflower seeds leaped across the sky. This time, Han Fei saw it clearly. Because the tails of the sunflower seeds were connected to a thread, the distance they slashed out was particularly long and looked extremely ferocious. Han Fei held the infinity water in his hand and turned it into thousands of flying blades, rushing at the sunflower seeds that looked like giant claws. Since he was already here, there was nothing Han Fei didn't dare to do. No matter how powerful this sunflower was, it was only at the heaven-opening state. No matter how strong the heaven-opening state was, he couldn't even escape or reverse time. Different from the situation in the mist just now, Han Fei was very determined this time. Even the old turtle said, "Don't worry. If it comes down to it, I will lend you a hand." Bang, bang, bang. Although the quality of infinity water had been improved, it was still a sea-quelling bizarre treasure after all. It was still far from being a divine weapon. However, it did not mean that the heaven-opening state could resist the attack of the sea-quelling bizarre treasure. Otherwise, if a heaven-opening stage expert could even block a top-grade sea-quelling bizarre treasure, wouldn't he have to use a divine weapon to kill a heaven-opening stage expert? Thus, when the two of them collided, clang clang clang, dense sounds of collisions resounded, and ripples surged out like raindrops in a disorderly manner. It could be said that no one could do anything to the other. This sunflower did not display any special great Tao. When it felt the resistance of the infinity water, all the sunflower seeds exploded together. That scene was really like a storm of pear blossoms. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. With so many attacks equivalent to the power of the heaven-opening state, he certainly couldn't block them. Even if the infinity water could block them, it was under his control. If he tried to block them forcibly, it would only consume his spiritual power, slow down his spirit, and reduce his combat power. Therefore, Han Fei could only use the golden light leap. However, there seemed to be something wrong with the void here. He didn't move forward much after the leap, but instead, he was directly immersed in the waves of the terrifying giant claws. Han Fei was shocked. Since the golden light leap didn't work, what about the ultimate speed he had just comprehended? Although he had inherited the ultimate speed when he inherited the ultimate blade, he certainly didn't have time to study it in such a short time. However, he didn't have time to study it. Han Fei had also inherited this great Tao, so in the countless giant claws of the sunflower seeds, Han Fei was as agile as a shadow. At the moment of each giant claw, he made an instant judgment. He was really dancing on the tip of the blade. If others saw this, their jaws would definitely drop in shock. If they were accidentally slashed, they might be crushed into pieces in an instant. Even if Han Fei could use the Gemini divine technique to fight the enemies in the form of black and white mist, it didn't mean that these giant claws couldn't hit him. Once they hit him, the black and white mist would be easily cut, and the effect might not be as good as now. Swish, swish, swish. Although the blades were endless, in fact, Han Fei's dodging only happened in the blink of an eye. The whole process was so fast that it took no more than 1 second for Han Fei to dodge the giant claws of the sunflower seeds. There were as many as 10,000 giant claws of the sunflower seeds. At this time, the giant claw of the sunflower seeds actually had the function of retracting. What was shot out was a giant claw, and it was retracted like a sharp sword returning to its shell, extremely fast. Han Fei stretched out his hand and waved, and the infinity water quickly returned. Han Fei turned into a void hand, grabbed a giant claw of the sunflower seeds, and with the speed of its return, he went to the black hole in the middle. But at this moment, the 5 big eyes around the sunflower lit up at the same time. Han Fei had forgotten about this. He really didn't know what these big eyes were for. But the 5 big eyes, like charging lasers, were surging with energy, and the 5 were about to shoot out. Fuck! Is it so high-end? If it was charging lasers, it would also be at the extreme speed, wouldn't it? It would only be faster than him, not slower than him. Therefore, Han Fei made a prompt decision. The infinity water directly wrapped around his body, and the immortal killing aura blocked in front of him without hesitation. Swish, swish, swish. Sure enough, the 5 energy beams intertwined in the middle, forming a light curtain. The enemies didn't hit him at all, but waited for him to break through. Huh. Dragon transformation technique. Crack. At that moment, Han Fei activated the dragon transformation technique, swallowed a 5th level Dao pattern pill, and directly broke through. This level seemed to depend on his strength. There was nothing to say. He just had to break through. Bam! Like an energy barrier, Han Fei crashed into it, and even the infinity water began to burn. Han Fei felt as if he was passing through the center of the earth, and he was about to be cooked. Han Fei seemed to see his body melting, his flesh and blood blurring, and his vision going blind. He felt that if he rushed into the black hole, he would probably be melted too. If it were anyone else, they would definitely be impatient, because if they rushed forward, they would be melted, and it would be too late to get out. But Han Fei had long suspected that this sunflower was fake, and he even let it hack him once. Although this thing did hack him just now, there was no information, and Han Fei still suspected that it was fake. He suspected that this was still a test of his Taoist heart. Therefore, Han Fei rushed forward without hesitation. Even when Han Fei felt that his consciousness was about to disappear, he didn't turn back time. Swish! At that moment, Han Fei rushed into the black hole, only to feel a coolness all over his body. When he suddenly opened his eyes, he was shocked to find that the scene in front of him had changed. Right in front of him was the misty steppes that were still emitting smoke. And next to Han Fei, it was the puppet that he had seen before. Fuck. Everything is fake. So I've been here for a long time. Han Fei was speechless. This kind of thing, no matter how fancy it was always the same. They were all deceiving you from all aspects, penetrating your soul, body, and mind, but you didn't even know it. Han Fei couldn't help but make up his mind. In the future, he would also do such fancy tests. Just the thought of watching others die under your casual arrangements was exhilarating. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the puppet next to him. I really doubt whether you are real or fake. Of course, the muscular man didn't respond, and the old turtle shouted, I've been deceived too. Han Fei said, I guess you may be suppressed later. I may not even be able to communicate with the source sea. Those ahead may just be appetizers. This road is the most difficult. The old turtle said, the Void Temple, as long as you don't destroy me. Han Fei felt that he was in his peak state, so he set foot on the road of trial again without hesitation. Since he had already come this far, there was no reason to hesitate anymore. Han Fei walked up the steps step by step, but he didn't feel any pressure or danger. Huh? So easy. Han Fei stepped on the 1,000 steps and stood on the steps, only to see that the steps extended infinitely. And in front of him stood a girl in a fiery red dress. Her appearance was comparable to Xia Xiaochan's. However, Xia Xiaochan was born to be cute. If she didn't fight, you wouldn't know that Xia Xiaochan was actually hot-tempered. And this girl was obviously hot, not because of her clothes, but because of her personality. Looking at the big knife next to her that was burning with raging flames, Han Fei knew that she was a strength-type player. Besides, her expression was very cold and arrogant. Just by looking at her, Han Fei felt that he had been underestimated. Before Han Fei said anything, the fiery girl said, Void Temple, in the final test, you need to answer 3 questions from me and take 3 slashes from me. If you have no questions, you can pass. A faint smile appeared on Han Fei's face. Go ahead. Chapter 2028. Han Fei didn't expect that the final test would be like this. He was stopped by a little girl to ask questions. Of course, Han Fei wouldn't underestimate this girl. Since she was allowed to take the final test, she couldn't be weak. However, if she asked a question, there would be many possibilities. As long as it was a question, the answer might be different. Of course, he wouldn't take the initiative to cater to her. This was a matter of ideas. If he had to answer a question against his own will. If it was anyone else, they would not be able to accept it. Because everyone had their own ideas, everyone was different. He couldn't just cater to the ideas that didn't match his own just to become a disciple of the Void Temple. The girl asked coldly, if one day, you are faced with a choice, betray the Void Temple or die. What will you choose? Han Fei said with a smile, I, Han Fei, will never betray my teammates. Of course, the premise is that these people are really my teammates. We can share weal and woe, and we can live and die together. The girl said, so, if you don't treat us as teammates, you can betray us without any qualms? Han Fei said with a smile, you can think of it that way. I'll treat others the way they treat me. If the Void Temple doesn't treat me well, do you think I'll take it seriously? The girl glared at him. Aren't you afraid that the Void Temple will kill you now? Han Fei sneered. The Void Temple has set up a lot of tests. I dare not say that I am the strongest and the most talented, but it's not easy for me to get here. I don't think you'll attack me because of this. Otherwise, the Void Temple will be too shameless. With that said, Han Fei said, girl, you've already asked 3 questions. However, the girl glared at him again. I only asked 1. Han Fei was speechless. Do you not know how to count? It was 1 question, but 3 questions were generated. We even discussed them. How did it become 1? The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. You're not going back on your word. The girl said, just 1. Okay, it's time for you to take my blow. Han Fei was speechless. Fine, I'll take 1. He would not take advantage of this. The girl said, your physique shouldn't be weak, and you can control the art of time. In that case, you won't be able to block this strike. In any case, you can reverse time. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. He always felt that he was being watched all the way. Was it this girl? He even knew about his great Tao of time. Han Fei immediately said with a black face, did you peep at me? Bah! The girl spat. Who's spying on you? I know, and I have my ways. You just have to take 1 of my attacks. But why can't I block it? Doesn't that mean I can only let you chop me? Han Fei could sense that the girl was getting impatient. She said, why do you have so many questions? In any case, I can't kill you. Watch the knife. Because the flaming long knife was even taller than the girl jumped up and grabbed the handle of the knife, which made Han Fei dumbfounded. However, in the next second, Han Fei didn't dare to be careless, because the girl swung the big knife 3 times. Each swing of the big knife was thousands of meters long, and the flames formed a domain with a whoosh. The scorching flames were even comparable to the 5-eyed laser just now. As soon as the knife fell, it was as heavy as the sky collapsing, and the momentum was like thunder in the sky. The sharpness of the blade made the flames flow backward, which looked quite intimidating. Before the knife fell, Han Fei seemed to feel the bones in his body creaking. When the roaring flame wild knife fell, it was aimed at the top of Han Fei's head. Fuck! Aren't you afraid of killing me? Han Fei slightly tilted his head. If his head was blown up by the knife, how could he maintain his image? Clang crack, crack, crack. Han Fei felt as if a big star was pressing on his body, as if a small world was smashing on his shoulder, and he only managed to resist for 2 seconds. In the 3rd second, he heard his bones breaking, and he was cut from head to waist. His golden blood was almost burnt up, making a sizzling sound. This knife was strong, but Han Fei felt that the girl didn't use the power of the heaven-opening realm. But even so, it at least proved one thing. In the sea-opening realm, there were still people who could break his defense so easily. Even though the girl couldn't cut it in half with a single slash, the distance between them was not far from it. Besides, when the girl attacked, she was quite casual. She just jumped up and held the knife, and took advantage of the momentum to cut him. Obviously, the girl didn't use her full strength. Han Fei directly reversed time and appeared next to her. When Han Fei recovered, he heard the girl say, "Go on." With that, the girl disappeared. And Han Fei had crossed 1,000 steps, and everything around him returned to normal. However, Han Fei didn't know whether this test was easy or difficult. In terms of difficulty, it was indeed easy. But in terms of answering questions, it was unknown. Han Fei shook his head slightly. No matter whether it was possible or not, he would find out later. As long as he stuck to his own idea, it would be over. He was lucky to enter the Void Temple. Even if he didn't enter, he still had the demon purification pot. Unless a strong master of the Void Temple came to kill him, Han Fei didn't think he would die here. Huh? When Han Fei stepped on the steps again, he couldn't help but be a little surprised. Why was there no power blocking the steps behind? Was the last test so easy? Han Fei crossed 1,000 steps in one breath and soon reached the 2,000th step. He was very fast. However, when he just reached the 2,000th step, he saw a girl standing in the same style as just now, with a broadsword stabbed diagonally next to her. Han Fei was surprised. "Why are you here again?" The girl frowned. "Why are you here so fast?" Han Fei was dumbfounded. "I didn't encounter any obstacles when I came up. Of course I came here fast. Not to mention me, even if it was anyone else, they would also be here in a flash, okay?" But Han Fei didn't know why the girl asked this. He couldn't help but ask, "Then, how slow should I be?" The girl said, "You should think about why it was so easy for you to climb without any obstacles." Han Fei was also puzzled. "Why?" The girl was also speechless. "Because you will face me again, and I will make you feel fear. You will be under pressure from the bottom of your heart." Han Fei. Han Fei didn't think so at all. "I thought you were just a projection that would be gone after the first test. I didn't expect that your projection would be so strong and remember what happened just now." Seeing Han Fei's blank expression, the girl was also speechless. She said angrily, "This time, you need to answer one more question of mine and take one attack from me. You can try to resist this attack." Han Fei asked, "That's it?" The girl, Han Fei didn't mean to belittle her. He just felt that there was no difference between 1 or 2 attacks from this girl. "You can just let me pass. I don't have to climb the stairs to wait for the test. You are already a king, but you still have to take this test every day. It's so annoying." The girl snorted coldly. "If you want to enter the Void Temple, you must have the strength to enter the Void Temple. Watch the knife." With that, the girl pulled the knife again. However, this time, Han Fei was fascinated. Because the fiery saber was still stuck in the ground, the girl jumped up and grabbed it, only to grab a saber-shaped flame. The girl jumped up and held the fiery saber that looked like a clone with both hands. In the air and around them, sparks were drifting. In Han Fei's eyes, what he saw was not a knife. What he saw was that in the world in front of him, there seemed to be flames from the outer space, slashing down from the sky and leisurely. This knife was very slow, but it was indeed terrifying. The scene was like the end of the world, as if a huge star had crashed and annihilated this world. More importantly, Han Fei felt a tingling pain in his soul. It turned out that this was not an attack aimed at his body but at his soul. This terrifying power was actually the impression of this saber in his divine soul. Hiss! Han Fei gasped. If he was hit, would his soul be in danger? If he didn't make it in time, it would be too late for him to reverse time. Therefore, Han Fei stretched out his hand, grabbed the embroidery needle, gathered the power of his soul, and moved his body slightly, but the air around him was surging. On the embroidery needle, ripples appeared one after another, which showed how powerful Han Fei was. Divine Stab. Divine Stab was the strongest soul attack that Han Fei knew. Although its level was not high enough, compared with the 100 Beast Soul Devouring Roar, its single explosive power was far superior. Most importantly, the level of combat skills didn't make much of a difference in the hands of a powerhouse like Han Fei, except for the particularly heaven-defying combat skills and divine arts. So, the knife had already been slashed down. The only thing that Han Fei could use was the heavenly god stab, which made Han Fei realize the shortcoming of his soul combat power.